Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Los Angeles City Council. Today is July the 11th, 2006, and we are in the John Farrow Council Chambers of Room 340, City Hall, where we meet every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m., except for the first Friday of the month, in which we are at Van Nuys City Hall. And we invite folks to come down here for public comment, for general public comment, or for items that have been agendized for public comment. We are being broadcast live on Channel 35, LA City View, and we are rebroadcast in the evenings, as well as webcast through our city's homepage at www.lacity.org, where there's a wealth of information about your city departments and city government as well. We are also available through Council Phone, which you can call in at 213-621-CITY and listen to the proceedings of the City Council or its committees. We are just a little bit after the hour. We also wanted to note that you can testify for general public comment at Van Nuys City Hall if that is closer to where you live. We have remote capability. If you go to Van Nuys City Hall, they'll walk you through how to do that. And we, when we're at City Hall in Van Nuys, we can do the same from here in downtown. We have 9 members here. I want to thank Council members Cardenas, Gruhl, Labange, Parks, Perry, Rosendahl, Wesson, and Zine for being here timely, pursuant to Council rules. We are awaiting one of the following 6 members: Councilwoman Hahn, Councilman Huizar, Councilman Padilla, Councilman Reyes, Councilman Smith, and Councilmember Weiss. As soon as one of those individuals comes down, we will have a quorum, which is 2/3 of our 15, and we will begin the meeting. Thank you. If I can please have everybody's attention, please, and if I can ask folks to wind up their conversations, and Madam Clerk, if you will please call the roll. Shh.
Cardenas, Gruhl, Hahn, Huizar, Labange, Padilla, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. First order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Weiss moves and Mr. Labange seconds. If there's no objection, we will approve those minutes. Next order of business.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Ms. Gruhl moves and Mr. Parks seconds. If there's no objection, that'll be unanimously approved too. Next order
And
of
Mr.
business.
President, this is Tuesday and there is a flag salute on the agenda.
All righty. If we can ask our General Manager from the Department of Recreation and Parks to lead us in the salute to the flag. If you'll please join us up here at the podium. If we can have everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Can everyone please rise and uncover? Right hand over your hearts. Begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muckery. Done like a good Navy man. Appreciate that. Next order of business.
Mr. President, this is a time for comments from the public on items not on council's agenda.
Okay, we will move forward pursuant to council rules on 10 minutes of general public comment on items not on the agenda but before our jurisdiction. I'd like to ask Mr. Michael Hunt to come forward as our first speaker. Mr. Hunt? Yes, Mr. Hunt is first.
Can you reframe the clock to about 2 minutes?
Go ahead. We have 1 minute per person to get through as many people in 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, well, first I'd like to say welcome to the Venice Outlaws. We all in the house today. And wow, man, it's like we're ready to go back to work and we really don't want to be here anymore. I think that I hope everybody's getting the big picture now about First Amendment rights and civil rights. You know, I always like to say that I'm the lion and I'm the king of the jungle and I'm a ferocious lion, you know, and that means that, you know, whatever it takes, we need to be back at work trying to feed our families and things like that. So read in between the lines, you guys. Let's get us back to work. Let's cause some peace, some jobs, some good things in the community and make it all happen for what's real and, you know, keep it like that. So, like I said, let me give the big ups to the Outlaws. You know, we'll be back in 2 and 2, you guys. All right.
Thank you. Mr. Matt Dowd is next.
Yeah, thank you very much. Welcome back to the Matt Dowd, Mike Hunt Show featuring City Council. It's great to be back out. City Hall, I feel like this is my work. It's starting to be more fun than what I used to do. So I'm starting to enjoy the glare of the spotlight now. So now I know what you've all been basking in for so long. And I noticed the acknowledged Ed Roybal a couple of weeks ago, and I don't see anyone like him here because I was disgusted of the swimming pool like scenario. And you know, discrimination is not just racial. You know, and that's what we're here about, is the discrimination that's happening against artists at Venice Beach based on the utility value of the medium on which they create. If your art is on a t-shirt, you're suddenly a criminal. But you can go to youtube.com and look up Matt Dowd and Zuma Dog. Just search for those and you'll see everything. We put the Van Nuys thing up too. It's hilarious.
Zuma Dog is next.
Zuma Dog, West Side, you feel me? Hey, first of all, I'm here to do a little Brown Act promo because the Brown Act covers things outside the meeting. You're allowed to use this stuff and promote it elsewhere. First of all, if y'all watching here, want to turn to VH1. Everybody watching, tune into VH1 today at 5:55 p.m. exactly. You can see the newest comedy duo, Zuma Dog and Eric Garcetti, a.k.a. Eric G, y'all. That's with 1 G, y'all. It's Zuma Dog with 2 Gs because I'm twice the G. You feel me, though? If you want to see Eric Garcetti on VH1 in the triumphant network debut, 5:55. Give it up for Eric Garcetti, VH1, yeah. Then Thursday, PBS KCET. You never thought you'd see Zuma Dog on PBS KCET, but even they can see how I'm being so wrongly damaged by City Council. They picked up on the story. You got KCET, that's Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Y'all, if you're watching, tune into PBS. Thursday, 6:30 p.m., 1 a.m. replay. They're feeling Zuma Dog. They're going, oh, you guys are going to look so bad on TV. Then go to my website for the LA Times article. The Cleveland Plain Dealer picked up on the story, y'all. Yeah, ZumaDog.com.
Thank you, Mr. Dog.
Brown Act, you feel me? Hoo-dee-hoo!
Melrose Larry Green is our next speaker.
I realize the previous speakers were very colorful, and we only have 1 minute, but on a serious note, yesterday I went to the funeral of the three young victims of gang violence it was held at the Groman Mortuary in West Washington, and it should not be part of the job experience of a 3 or a 4-year-old in this city to have to look at the open coffin of someone that's been killed. Something must be done. It's not a Democratic or Republican issue to stop the gang violence in this city. Yesterday, a 4-year-old young girl was shot. Something must be done. Now, all you in City Council goes to members of the League and City meetings. The mayor goes to meetings with other mayors. Whether it's getting involved with the federal government, getting involved with the LAPD, getting involved, something must be done because the people are very upset in this city. And like I say, it should not be part of a young person's summer to have to look in an open coffin. 3 innocent people were killed, 38 rounds of fire from an AK-47. You can offer $200,000 rewards. That will not solve the problem. Thank you. I'm Melrose Larry Green.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Sylvia Hawkins is our next speaker for 1 minute.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ms. Sylvia Hawkins. On the investigation of the 3 Latino dead boys, I am convinced that these dead boys are alive and not dead. These are games with fake money deals. We are asking our Mayor, Antonio Racas, to please stand out of the way during media interview with Jan Perry, whom should be interviewed of the district. We are not in the business to listen to criminals, gangbangers, or people that are on cocaine, as you are on cocaine, Mayor Antonio Racas. These boys has been traded off to other countries just to steal and back again with other people's bank account. Please read my profile that is out now on what is going on with a regular union marriage that is between 20 different people. Again, we are asking control even with Minute-Maid men and even
Thank
with
you, Ms.
people that
Hawkins.
are not examples.
Our
Thank you very much. My
Next
name is
speaker
Ms.
is
Sylvia
Roberto
Hawkins.
Carbajal.
Hello, Mr. Garcetti. Yeah, just got out of jail. Went down to a awareness meeting. Well, actually, I went by an awareness meeting, and apparently, well, actually, I didn't become in violation of a restraining order put on me by Jan Perry. I was in my own neighborhood. I turned the corner. I didn't see her. When I did, I immediately withdrew and started heading away from her as per my restraining order, but I was still arrested. She put some brigadier general or something to go get me, so I tape recorded. I'm hoping that maybe I can get an attorney through viewing this to look into it. I did a month in jail for something I didn't do again, and previously arrested right at the door here, trying to come here and do public speaking, which to me is akin to the electronic cutting out of a man's tongue. We can just get somebody like she did to perjure themselves and deny you your right to speak. I mean, there's got to be some kind of ethics thing, somebody to oversee this. So I was hoping maybe, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Our next speaker is Amira Jessica Diamond.
Good day. My name is Amira Jessica Diamond, and I'm here from the Bay Area. My colleague Julia Butterfly Hill brought me to Los Angeles many weeks ago regarding the case of the South Central farmers. And I wanted to let you know that we have just successfully hosted an International Solidarity Day with the South Central farmers happening in 30 cities worldwide. And I'll tell you that the event that happened in the Bay Area was a huge success. In Oakland, California, we had over 500 people and all the major news networks covered it. We also received a statement from Barbara Lee, our congresswoman from the 9th District, and I wanted to read to you what Barbara Lee said. She said, "I am proud to add my voice to yours today as you gather here in California's 9th Congressional District in support of the South Central farmers, and I stand in solidarity with you as you continue the struggle for social and environmental justice in your communities. I want the City Council to know that the South Central farmers are prepared to work with the City Council for a just resolution to the issue at the South Central Farm, and I thank you for your attention."
Thank you. Juan Velasquez? Is Juan Velasquez there? To be followed by Luigi.
Good morning. My name is Juan Velasquez, and I took the liberty of writing a letter to the mayor, to the governor, and a couple of friends in Hollywood about the consequences that follow the destruction of the South Central Farm because it was destroyed. The people needed it for food, and somebody standing around here had the power to stop it, and they didn't. I hope that all that money they're getting, they're going to use it to help their conscience, because what they did was wrong, and we need help. We need as much support as we can, and we're gonna get all the help we can get, and I hope your money helps you, Ms. Jan Perry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Luigi? And then Charlie Lopez.
1 minute, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 1.5.
1 minute, please, go ahead.
Hello, friends and City Council. Are we annoying you yet? We come here week after week to speak about the importance of the community gardens in South LA, And yet it's easy to feel like we're standing before a mute city council which won't engage us in dialogue or give this important subject an agenda item at this critical time. The farmers have been evicted, the face of the farm has been rearranged, but we feel like we're standing before an inanimate city council. We're here to use the democratic process, and we trust that it's going to get us somewhere. Are we annoying you talking about this week after week? Because we're not going to drop the subject. We're not going to wait until years from now forward-looking city planners suggest a community garden that's also a learning center, an after-school place, and a green space to infuse life in the meanest neighborhood in Los Angeles. We already have this place. The way this place has gone, the way the farmland has gone has been a shame. Mr. Delgadillo, the shame falls squarely on you, first of all, for recommending a sale that wasn't necessary.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charlie Lopez.
Yeah, my name is Charlie Lopez. I would like to give my time to Amar.
Okay. Ahmad Jamal.
Yes. I've been at the farm now for the last 3 weeks, every day, 24 hours a day, and I've seen some of the most horrific scenes against peaceful people that probably anybody's ever, well, no, I won't go that far, but we have seen police forcibly evict peaceful people from a farm. I've seen police, along with thug security guards hired by Mr. Horowitz, forcibly beat down protesters. I've been harassed by Sheriff's Department, by the LAPD. It really is a crying shame that the City Council, who is here to apparently protect and to serve the people of this city, stand back and watch what has gone on without doing anything and without saying anything. I just wish we were better about ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're 2 minutes over our public comment, and pursuant to Council Rule 8, which allows for a cumulative total of up to 10 minutes on items of public interest unless a member moves. I will read the names of these speakers in the record: Alberto Tlatoa, Maribel Tlatoa, Chuck Tenon, Brian Zolan, Laura Sprague, Duke Russell, Ruth Sarnoff, Gene Kirster, and Bill Ring into the record. And that, if there's no motion otherwise, that will close public comment for today. Next order of business, please.
First item on the agenda, Mr. President, is an item notice for public hearing. Item number 1, the recommendation for council action is to open the hearing and continue the hearing and ordinance to August 1st.
Okay. If there's no objection, we will open the hearing and continue that until the 1st. Is there any objection? If not, so ordered. Next order of business.
Next items, Mr. President, are also public hearing items 2 through 8, street lighting ordinances, to deny protests or to abandon the projects.
Okay. Colleagues, anybody wishing to call any of those special? Hearing none, if we can open the roll on the items, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Next items.
Next item, Mr. President, is item number 9. That's a special presentation regarding Griffith Observatory. Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
Yes, Mr. Levon, do you want to hold that on the desk, number 9? Okay, we'll call that special. Next item, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have been held, items 10 through 23. Items 10, 11, and 12 are commissioners. Education Neighborhoods Committee met on those this morning, and committee reports are to be submitted on those items.
Okay, why don't we hold those on the desk, this commission?
Then that would leave before Council 13 through 23.
Okay, colleagues, any specials from 13 through 23? Mr. Padilla?
3, please.
23 for Mr. Padilla. Any other specials, colleagues? Ms. Gruhl? 19 for Ms. Gruhl. Any other special items, colleagues, on the rest of those?
Could I
Ms.
just
Gruhl?
ask, just on 23, not to call it special, but just have it added to, it would be, come back to T committee as well.
It's been called special by Mr.
Oh,
Padilla
it has.
already.
I'm
so
sorry.
we have it. Any other items, colleagues? If not, let's open the roll on the balance, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have not been held, items 24 through 33. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay. Colleagues, any specials for items 24 through 33? 24 through 33, Mr. Weezer? 32 for Mr. Weezer? Mr. Parks? 32 is on the Owens Lake dust mitigation, yes. That's been called special. Any other specials, colleagues? If not, let's open and close the public hearings on those. And on the balance, if we can prepare the roll and tabulate the vote, please.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
On the supplemental agenda, item number 34 is an item notice for public hearing, and the applicant consents to a continuance to September 20th.
Okay. Is there any objection, colleagues, to accepting that continuance? If not, we will continue it to that date. Next item, please.
Item number 35 is an item for which public hearing has not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay. Does anybody wish to be heard on this from the public? We have no cards. Seeing none, we'll open and close the public hearing. Anybody wishing to call 35 special? Yes, Mr. Padilla? That will call special. Next items, please.
That would take council back to the items called special. Do you wish to take the commissioners up first, or do you wish to take up the...
Sure, with Mr. Labange's permission, we'll do commissioners, and then we'll have the special presentation. So if we can ask the three commissioner nominees to come forward, please. And I'll recognize Mr. Padilla. The chair to say a few words. Mr. Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just forwarding the commission appointees an opportunity to come forward. Ms. Linda Lux is item number 10, appointee to the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. We had a good discussion this morning about this commission in particular and the timeliness of her joining the commission with the upcoming Neighborhood Council Review Commission process that is beginning. Mr. Keith Roman and Ms. Kara Carlisle are both appointees to the Human Relations Commission and bring to these assignments a very valuable experience and expertise that will well serve the city. So after a good consideration in committee this morning, I'm happy to recommend confirmation of the three nominees before us.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to be heard, or would commissioners like to say anything? The nominees? If not, all right, we will open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Thank you all very much for your service, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. That will return to number 9, and I'll recognize Mr. Labange to set the stage.
Commissioners, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Tom.
All right. We will begin presentation with Mr. Labange. You want to say anything on the outset, or?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members, before us is an item that we've heard many times in public comment about the Griffith Observatory and its improvement, its $93 million improvement. And members, I am very proud of what many people have done before this time and your time to push the renovation of this very historic building. I have asked the general manager of the department, the city engineer, the great director of the observatory, the wonderful new director and leader of our Office of Department of Disability, and Brenda Levin, if I may mention, the noted historic architect for Los Angeles, to discuss this issue. Because, as you know, the public comment is a very strong point. And I know many of you have questioned that. In past correspondence that I've sent to each and every one of you to review it, I believe in this presentation it will help us understand the advantage of what is being proposed by the observatory. With that, I will say that there will be many great years in Los Angeles. There have been many great years in the past. But one of the great years will be 2006, when in the fall of this year we will reopen the observatory, thanks to a lot of hard work by many people. With that, I call on Mr. Muckery for this presentation. General Manager, Department of Recreation and Parks.
Thank you, Councilmember Labange. It is quite an honor to be here representing the Department of Recreation and Parks to discuss the reopening of the Griffith Observatory. As we know, January 6, 2002, it closed for a renovation and expansion. But those words do not even come close to describe really what is going on to that icon. Beneath the skin of the observatory, it is completely new, brand new. It is going to be filled with exhibits that are going to be better than anywhere in the universe, right, Ed?
Exactly.
As an icon, the observatory probably comes close to City Hall and the Hollywood sign. And it's quite interesting to note, all three have gone through a major renovation, and I'm quite proud that I've been part of all three. And as Ed Krupp will tell you, the Hollywood sign may be more visible, but the observatory will have more content. But what I want to do, before I introduce Gary Lee Moore, I want to tell you that even though you have Bureau of Engineering and Rec and Parks up here representing the city, this was done with a lot of people and a lot of time. Pfeiffer Partners, and Levin and Associates, Amoroso the Construction. We have fabricators, Maltby of exhibits. We have C&G Partners designed it. But we also had the Department of Water and Power, Street Services, Department of Transportation, General Services, Building and Safety, Cultural Affairs, Cultural Heritage, Department of Disabilities, and we have Ms. Houston Swain here representing them, the CAO, the CLA, hundreds of community groups. Our partners, our major partner is Friends of the Observatory, who did the heavy lifting on fundraising for the exhibits. Camille Lombardo's here. And we have a special thanks to two individuals, one who is not here, from Bureau of Engineering, the project manager, Larry Gonzalez. He is not here. And of course, sitting to my left, Dr. Ed Krupp. Because you have to know this man. He was truly born to lead this effort. In fact, I am sure his parents left him there one day just so you could evolve into this thing. So without further ado, I want to introduce Gary Lee Moore, the City of Engineer. His department is responsible for the project management of that entire project.
Thank you, John. It's a tremendous partnership, and I just want to continue to echo John Muckery and his entire team at the Department of Recreation and Parks have been the best client to work with in this project. I have a few slides I'd like to show you here, and the first slide that I have in front of us is the 1934 view of the observatory from the south. And the existing observatory was 27,000 square feet. I'd like to walk you through now this is the observatory of today. And what we did in this project here is we've done four things. One, we've expanded it, doubling the size of the observatory. Secondly, we've added the Gottlieb Transit Corridor, connecting the new with the old. Third, we've done the complete renovation restoration. And fourth, we have the new state-of-the-art Samuel Ocean Planetarium. It's important to note here that this entire restoration here is basically, expansion has happened below ground. Let me show you. Here's the observatory a couple years ago when we dug out 40,000 cubic yards of soil in front to build this new underground theater and museum space. What you're looking at in this slide here is the new underground Depths of Space exhibit, which is being led with John Muckery, and the Department of Recreation and Parks are putting in the exhibits. But I just wanted to give you a little sneak preview of the underground area that we've built. Right next to this is a 200-seat Leonard Nimoy Event Horizon Theater that's also been built. Coming back to the aerial view, and in the foreground here of this photo is the new transit corridor, and this runs the entire length of the west side here. You're going to, as you see here, and Dr. Krupp and John will talk more about the exhibits, but it's spectacular views of Los Angeles, ever been seen before. It's just a tremendous opportunity here for everybody.
Excuse me, Mr. Moore, please address the issue of the access is what the concern is. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Along with your other remarks.
Sure. Great. This project is in complete compliance with all the local, state, and federal regulations regarding access. This design was done by Pfeiffer and Associates, and being such an important historic building as it is, they hired a specialist, and that's Brenda Levin, who helped work with this, and she'll go into detail on the access. Would you like Brenda?
Councilmember Hahn, would it be okay if Dr. Krups just whizzed through his slides, which point directly to the access issues?
Well, let me
They're
just explain to
identified.
council members, what they've done here is something totally different. They provided access to this building that they never had before. And the challenge that we met is, why is there no access up the double flight front door? And that's what I want them to explain. But in the presentation that I got before we came to council, it made me more aware of what their thinking was, to have more people have access to more parts of the building. So that is the concept. So if you could go forward with that, I'd appreciate it.
Excuse me, Councilmember, I need to move ahead
Yeah,
to
you can do
other
it, Ed.
slides.
You're fast.
Okay. Forgive me, I'm just moving through the Bureau slides, and then I'll get to mine and move through to the critical ones. I need, thanks. I'm going to just jump ahead a few slides to get to the point of the disabled access, since that's been requested.
This was done all through committee before.
Okay, thank you very much. Griffith Observatory renovation and expansion also had to comply fully with all requirements for disabled access, and prior to the award for construction contract, plans were reviewed by all required and relevant commissions and agencies, including the Cultural Heritage Board. Access to Griffith Observatory has been dramatically improved. While originally the observatory could only be entered via the historic and character-defining double terrace stairs and monumental bronze doors, the observatory now has, in fact, 7 points of entry. In fact, when the observatory reopens in the fall, the second plan, by the way, shows the additional points of entry. When the observatory reopens in late fall, all visitors will be challenged toward the west entrance on the Gottlieb Transit Corridor or the adjacent elevator on the lawn, which you can see that new elevator in this view as well. And on entering the observatory together, they will pass the cafe at the end of the universe, the Stellar Emporium, there's the elevator again, reach the edge of space where they will encounter the dramatic Gunther depths of space with the big picture and all of the precedent-shattering other exhibits that are on the floor and throughout the building. There are actually 3 elevators in a building that had none. 2 offer access to new halls. 1 transports visitors to the roof, which was never accessible to wheelchairs before. You can get a view of some of the other access points here, that elevator leading down to the Cosmic Connection ramp and the other elevator at the depths of space. The ramp on the west side not only leads to the West Terrace with its spectacular views of the basin in Los Angeles, but also inside to the brand new exhibit with the solar telescope in the hall of the Amundsen Hall of the Sky. And that as well gives access to the South Promenade, which goes all around the south side of the building, most visible side of the building. Again, wheelchairs have never been able to go in that territory before. They can go all the way around.
Stop you for a second. Yep. You can slow down a little bit.
Thanks.
So we can hear. Thank you.
Thank you. That promenade carries you all around to the brand new East Terrace with additional points of visibility and, of course, complete access. 2 doors on that side, one side leading to the Samuel Ocean Planetarium, the other door leading into the Hall of the Eye. View in the Hall of the Eye with the door access inside there, and, of course, a lift on the other side to get up into the rotunda. The clock, of course, is ticking, but as we continue on down to our opening in late fall, I can confirm that a great deal of work remains ahead for us on an event that is playing on the world stage. On reopening, Los Angeles, its Department of Recreation and Parks, in a successful public and private partnership with the Friends of the Observatory, will share with the world an educational facility, an historic and architectural landmark, and an astronomical tourist attraction without peer in the world and accessible to all. Admission is still free, and that attracts and serves visitors as diverse as the faces in our communities. We are then thinking cosmically, acting locally, and visible worldwide.
Ms. Swan, do you want to make some comments? Because you're the protector of accessibility as the general manager of the Department of Disability. Thank you.
Yes, Regina Houston Swain, Executive Director, Department on Disability. Our staff has been working collaboratively with Rec and Parks and all the relevant parties to ensure that this facility is accessible, physically accessible as well as programmatically accessible to people with disabilities. We are committed to making sure that this happens, and we are convinced that the facility is accessible, and relevant accommodations will be made to people with disabilities in the community.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the center table at this time? Mr. President, do you have any public comment cards?
We do. We have two public comment cards. We'd like to invite forward at this point Donna Doherty and Marianne Flanagan to give their comments as well. Thank you. We'll do 2 minutes per speaker.
40.
Don't worry, you'll have to.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and fellow council members and all of you who are here from the observatory. We're questioning the access at the front. We're not questioning the elevators, but we know that those cannot be used in case of fire. And we're talking about emergencies. How do people get out of the front 4 doors with 12 steps there? How do they do that in case of emergency? And don't tell us that you're going to put them to the back, get all of the able-bodied out first, and then take care of them. This could have been done. You saw a picture up there that showed they cut off the whole front entrance of that building in order to get that land cleared out, to make that underground thing. We're not saying they aren't in compliance. They are not in compliance on the top level, on the old building. They say they are, but we are saying, no, we need to double check that. There's no reason why they could not have done the thing at the front door, which should have been done. Universal design. We could have done as they did at UCLA to pull the steps out from the building and insert sloping walkways to the east and the west over the side steps. You don't even see those from the front. It would not have destroyed the historic fabric building one bit. And why do we not have one picture, one architectural design from these two incredible firms that shows how it could have looked? There's nothing. There was never an attempt made to make that front entrance accessible. It was a negative attempt to make it stay as it was in 1935. This is 2006. We've been through 9/11. We are on the top of the list for any kind of terrorist attack. We need that front entrance, and it isn't just for disabled. Remember, this is universal design. And people are in Europe now way ahead of us. People in Canada are way ahead of us. Everybody is ahead of us.
Thank you, Ms.
Please
Doherty.
answer our question on that. Why is there nothing
Ms.
at the
Flanagan is our
front
next speaker.
entrance? Never even a design.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty. I'm sorry, your time is up now. And our next speaker is Ms. Flanagan.
Thank you. And my name is Mary Ann Juneman Flanagan, old-time resident of Los Angeles, born at the county hospital. I've known Donna since she was 14. We went to boarding school together. I'm just so proud of her that she has been pursuing this for years. And I'm in the travel business. I bring in business. More and more. People will not walk upstairs. I had hip surgery. I got a bad knee. I'm overweight. I don't know, whatever. And if you can't put people on the ground floor, you almost lose a sale. I sell hotel group sales for weddings and bring in business to our wonderful city. So whatever it takes to get people on the front sloping walkways. Remember now, when you go to the casino over in, and that little sloping walkway that takes you all the way up to the top, everybody can get up to the 3rd floor, so simply. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening to Donna.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are our public comment for this item. We have 2 speakers on the queue. Mr. LeBon, do you want to finish up?
Members, I just wanted to say, I mean, this is a very true issue here, but study has been done and reviewed. This building that we're in right now, that's the main entrance to City Hall, Sprague Street. But what? The loading docks on Main Street, when they built and reconfigured it, was deemed to be where the ramps were. Okay? This building, 1928, when they restored it just a few years ago. I just want to ask the question, what was the thinking on why, if I could have Ms. Doherty's question, what was the thinking on why we did what we did in this approved, nearly completed building?
I think I'll answer that. In looking at the entire building, we looked at all ways to make the building accessible. We weren't looking just at the front doors. Because as Dr. Krupp said, the whole building, the desire was to make the whole building more permeable. This is a building that's free and open to the public. It gets 1.8 million visitors a year. It needs to disperse visitation. It needs to have people enter. Some people come up and look at the view first and then come through another door. Others go directly to the roof terrace and then come down and flow through the observatory. This is a local landmark. It is a California landmark, and it's eligible for the National Register. With that, we are able to ask Building and Safety to look at the State Historic Building Code, which provides legally to provide an alternative access within 200 feet of the front door for accessibility. We have provided 3 entrances within 125 feet of the front door, all of which are accessible. The preferred alternative, as it is written in the state code, is that the first preferred alternative is that access to any entrance within 200 feet of the front door should be provided. So we looked at that, we said, wow, we can do 3 access points within 125 feet. We did look at the slope walkway, which Donna has mentioned, which is at Powell Library at UCLA. Slope walkway is 110 feet, and the reason it's sloped is it can be slipped parallel to the face of the building without railings, without curbs, without walls, so that it doesn't change the appearance of the building at all, because Powell is also a historic building. They had 110 feet. If we did 110 feet on the west, it would hit the elevator and the edge of the transit corridor and block the ramps and the stairs up to the west terraces. If we did a ramp on the east, it would be off the hill. So it was impossible, physically impossible, to do a sloped walkway that Donna's referring to at Powell Library. They're too long. They're 1 in 20. That's what's required for a sloped walkway.
Also, members, in the fall of last year, with the help of Ms. Doherty, with a number of people from this disabled community in the throes of near completion of reconstruction, we did tour the building in the afternoon. And the fact that there's 7 new entrances, the fact that there was only 1 and then a side door that they had to open, the fact that there's elevators, the fact that a transitway is a corridor to encourage all patrons to go through to visit the observatory, the fact that you could get all around the observatory, which you never could before, that you could get to the roof of the observatory, which you never could before, it allowed me to feel comfortable to come before my colleagues. Because this project was approved before most of us sat here. I started on this project in 1992 with the late, great John Ferraro. And here we are in 2006, excuse me, Dr. Krupp, 2006, in nearing completion. It does have a lot of thought to it, and I would ask that you take this into advisement as we consider this matter as a point of information. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Hahn, to be followed by Mr. Zine. Councilmember Hahn.
Thank you. And you gave really the only explanation on why we don't have access for disabled in the front entrance. I mean, we've sat here for a long time, and that's the first time we've heard it was physically impossible. But I will tell you, every time I hear the public comment, I feel the same way she does. You know, to have the front entrance of this historic building not accessible to those who either don't want to use stairs or to those who physically cannot really seems incredulous to me. I mean, here we spent a lot of dollars on this renovation. I can't believe that from the very beginning we could not do it. And we're not saying we don't have more access to this building for disabled than we've ever had before. That's great. So we have 7 other entrances. That's great. But, you know, you were the first person to say why we couldn't do it at the front, because I don't think everything you've said still justifies not having disabled access to the front entrance. It basically says this front entrance is not for people who are physically disabled. And I think that's the wrong message to send after we've spent, this huge renovation. And yes, it's a landmark, and it's going to be better than ever, and we're going to have more access. But to say that, if somebody wants to go in the front entrance, in my opinion, in 2006, they should be able to go into the front entrance. It's nice to say that people go in different entrances, and some want to go to the roof, and some want to see the view. Well, that's their choice. But if your choice is to go into the front entrance, to me, we've pretty much said, if you can't walk up the steps, you can never go into the front entrance. And I just, I find that really too bad and problematic. And I can't believe, with all the design minds and all, the creativity, that we could not have figured out how to have a ramp, one ramp, going up into the front entrance. I still have a hard time believing that.
I appreciate your skepticism, and it's not only the dramatic transformation that any ramp that one might conceive would do to a cultural and historic landmark of the city that is, in fact, mandated to follow state regulations. But in addition to that, after you build the ramp, you cannot, in fact, incorporate a mechanism to open the monumental bronze front doors automatically. There is no way to get those doors open. And so you also have the conundrum of having a ramp that leads up to a terrace that, in fact, prevents people from getting into there because of these historic doors. You would wind up with a complete transformation of the rotunda, the facade of the building, in fact, the entire character of the building, which was, in fact, preserved very deliberately by going underground in the first place. We would have saved a great deal of money by simply adding the addition on the front lawn and blocking the existing observatory. But in fact, it was in respect to the historic character and our responsibility to preserve that building for all of Los Angeles that brought us to those conclusions.
Well, all of Los Angeles includes people who are disabled, so it's not one or the other.
Ms. Hahn, if I may, it's our understanding, Department on Disability, that those historical issues are why that entrance is no longer the main primary entrance. As I understand it, the west entrance is the primary entrance, which is completely accessible. The former north entrance is no longer the primary entrance.
So you're saying that everybody that comes is not going to go into the front door?
Our plan...
Wait, we're viewing the front entrance.
Our plan for getting people into the building when the observatory reopens, in fact, involves a very heavy direction over to the west side. We would have a bottleneck, in fact, with the kind of attendance that we expect trying to get into the north entrance in any case. And so we are very deliberately, in all respects, both with interpretive staff as well as with operations staff, directing people over to the west side in the elevator and the adjacent entrance in the transit corridor to bring them, in fact, to the most amazing part of the observatory in the depths of space as their first view and a kind of an aha moment when they get in there.
But if somebody chooses to go into the front entrance and they can walk up the steps, they can.
Anybody can walk anywhere around the building at any time. That's correct.
Right. Well, I just think it's too bad that we couldn't make every single entrance accessible to those who, for whatever reason, cannot climb up the stairs. I think that's too bad. I do.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Zion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Doctor, how long have you been at the observatory?
I started there in 1970.
And you've been very passionate about that facility.
I am passionate about the observatory.
And you'd like access for everyone?
I would.
The planning that went into this, the ADA compliance, the dollars, how much are we spending for this renovation?
The total expense of the project is $93 million.
$92 million?
93.
$93 million. And Mr. Muckery, I know your concern for the people of Los Angeles to provide them with access, with the ability to see what Los Angeles has to offer through Rex and Parks, and Mr. Moore, your engineering to make sure the structures don't fall down. make sure they're constructed properly. I've got, and I know Tom LaBonge's passion for Los Angeles, I've got trust and confidence that you folks are making the decision that is for the security of the people and for the access to people. If we're compliant with the ADA, if we have access, whether it be through one door or the other door, we're spending $93 million on an observatory. I haven't been there in many years, but I used to travel and visit there on Sundays. I know it's a wonderful gathering spot, and I'm sure there'll be millions of people wanting to see it once it finally opens. So I understand the concern about the access, but I think if we have other access, and we're not excluding people from entering, and we're in compliance with the ADA, which is the standard that Los Angeles subscribes to, and we're at the contemporary standard of 2006. And Doctor, with your passion for that observatory, I know your heart and soul's in there, you wouldn't want to exclude anyone. You want to make it convenient and accessible to everyone in Los Angeles, to the visitors, the residents, et cetera. So I trust that you're doing the right path that you have to follow. And taking that all in consideration, we may not make 100% of the people happy, but if we make 99% of the people happy, maybe that's a good number to strive for. So I trust that everything you've done in the planning, the engineering, the architecture, and the building is what the best we could get, and an investment of $93 million for the people of Los Angeles. So I seldom don't agree with one of my colleagues, Janice Hahn. I respect her and her position, but I don't know what else you folks could have done given the fact that you wanted to expand it, you wanted to make it accessible, and you wanted to comply with it. I know Ms. Doherty's been here many times, and she's spoken about this entrance continuously. And the response I've heard today is that an adequate response, that we've done everything we can do to make it work for everyone. So I want to give you my voice of support with it. And Tom LaBonge, I know your love and passion for this, and to see this grand opening, the ribbon cutting, I know you're going to be very proud that day in memory of John Ferraro, who was very passionate about Griffith Park. So to all of you, thank you for a job well done.
Thank you. Mr. Rosendahl is our next speaker, and then Mr. LaBonge for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank Tom LaBonge for his leadership on this whole issue. For the year I've been on the council, Tom and I have talked a lot, but I also want to acknowledge Donna Doherty, who since the day I came on the council has been coming before us to talk about accessibility and the handicap, which is a big issue for all of us. I'd like to ask Ken Bernstein, Mr. President, if it's okay, from the Conservancy to come up for a minute or two.
He's one of ours now, Mr. Rosendahl.
Oh, is that right? He joined us?
Yes. If you can't beat them, join them.
He's one of us? Whoa.
Yes. Our first Director of Preservation for the City of Los Angeles.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'm a bureaucrat now, so, yeah.
Well, you haven't been in long enough to be that, so we'll give you some time before you get that. What's your take on all of this from the perspective that you've most recently had with the Conservancy and now in your new position?
Well, this is actually a project we had reviewed both at the Conservancy, and I'm here wearing my new hat as head of the new Office of Historic Resources for the City Planning Department, which oversees the Cultural Heritage Commission of the city. And the Cultural Heritage Commission did review this project in 2001. And it's important to underscore some of the points that Brenda Levin made, because the appropriate standard to look at here is this State Historical Building Code, the California Historical Building Code, which is the code that is used and is invoked and is in fact mandatory to be used when requested for historic buildings in California. And it provides for full code compliance, full disabled access compliance, but provides for more flexibility in achieving full code compliance. And situations like this arise quite frequently with historic buildings, where either because of physical constraints or because of effects on the historic fabric of buildings, you need to look at more flexible ways of achieving that full code compliance. And so the provisions in this code allow for alternative entrances within 200 feet of a primary entrance. In this case, of course, the primary entrance is in effect shifting to the west entrance. But looking at the historic entrance, this is in full compliance with the State Historical Building Code and would be permitted. I've spoken in the past with Donna Doherty, both when I was with the Conservancy and since joining the city, and I'm very sympathetic with the arguments she's making. And she's trying to do the right thing for the disabled access community and for all who will use the site. But this is achieving full code compliance and complies with the State Historical Building Code.
Okay, but the code compliance, but when my colleague Janice Hahn was pointing out, it's so sad, considering all of the energy, all of the professionalism, all of the backdrop, that we couldn't make it handicapped accessible.
It is, again, though, this situation does arise frequently with historic buildings, as Councilman Labange pointed out with City Hall and other buildings where not every entrance is accessible, but the intent of the code is to ensure that historic buildings are protected, the important historic features are protected, and you are providing full accessibility to those historic spaces, and that's what is being achieved with this plan.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and congratulations on your new job.
Thank you. We have two more speaker cards, Mr. Labange, that I'd like to call forward if you want to then be the final speaker. Jamie Watson, I believe, is the next one, and then John Whitbread. My apologies.
Thank you. My name is Jamie Watson, and Ms. Hahn, I think you are the only person that gets it. And I just want to sincerely say thank you. I was recently in a wheelchair myself because of a leg injury. My whole life changed. The idea of access is not being able to get, to be able to have the idea to get into a door. It's actually getting in a door. I have a friend that's paraplegic. How is she going to be able to get into a door where she can't use her arms? I want to know what kind of provisions that the council has made for that. We talk about getting into doors, but if you don't have arms, how do you do that? What I would like to suggest is for the council members to put themselves in a wheelchair and go out there one day and see what it's like to not have arms, to not have legs, and access something that is accessible. The idea that you have to go further to get into a building because you're in a wheelchair just doesn't seem right. If another segment of a population was told they had to go to the back side of the door or the back side of a building to get in, I wonder what kind of outrage there would be just based on the fact that they were considered different or had different or were different. I too wonder why, with all of the thought and all the creativity and all of the resources that the city has, that we weren't able to get one accessible entrance. I heard the explanations and I understand them. However, if we can put someone on the moon, how come we can't have a door to let people in? I also think the city of Los Angeles has lost the opportunity to show how amazing and how supportive that this city could be towards people with disabilities from all over the world. We had a chance to be a model, and I think we've lost that chance. Thank you.
John Whitbread.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to have a couple words with council. My name's John Whitbread. I'm a staff member at the Westside Center for Independent Living in Los Angeles. And I wasn't sure whether I was going to say anything or not because this is a long-standing issue and it's been going on for a lot of different reasons for many, many years. Yes, there's a lot of improvements to the facility and there's a lot more access than there was. But let's get right back to this point of the front door. This front door could have been made accessible, could have had a ramp that stuck with historical guidelines and everything else. And this is really a story about personalities, entrenchment, and the ability to, well, let me just say, certainly now, all these folks know how to demonstrate that something meets historical criteria and so on. This could have been done, it should have been done, it could still be done, and for the money that's been spent, it's just unbelievable that we can't go in and out the front door. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitbread. That's our last public speaker. Mr. Labange is our next council speaker.
Last one. Thank you, members, and thank you for all the public comment there. Everyone who came into this room, who came through Main Street, came through the backside of City Hall. A decision was made for this building. Everybody, except those who drove in, okay? Everybody who goes to the Central Library, which was restored, another old building, 1920s building, Richard J. Riordan Central Library, goes in the side door off of Fifth Street, doesn't go in off of Hope Street, doesn't go in off of Flower Street, goes in off of the side door. Members, I couldn't, and I take it very seriously what Mrs. Doherty says and her passion that she's expressed. And I remember the cold winter day when we were up there this last year. I remember doing a motion, to bring this forth to committee and have discussion on this issue here, that the right thing was done on a building such as this. And Ms. Levin explained it very succinctly. If you could imagine, if I would, and I don't think we have one of those PowerPoint lasers that show the building, but if where the city clerk sits is the front of the observatory, an extended ramp would go either into the airspace of the park or double back and have rails within that two-step system, which was an option that we legally looked at and went through the whole way to find what was best. And because there's access throughout, and I will tell you, it's going to be a great day for all when the observatory is reopened, but it'll be a great day, especially for those who are challenged, to be able to go around that building that they'd never been able to go before. They'd be able to go to the top of the building that they'd never be able to go to the new expanded lower floor of the observatory that they'd never been able to go before. I appreciate the passion that people have, and I will continue to work to make sure all buildings are accessible, but this decision was reviewed and approved by many bodies of government. And we wouldn't be here before today, nearing completion of this project, unless it was approved that way. And Ms. Houston, I thank you for your remarks as well, because we count on the Department of Disability. And I know Mitch reviewed this and is out of the city at this time for us. Dr. Krupp, thank you. Mr. City Engineer, Mr. Muckery, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We actually have Ms. Hahn for a second time.
Thank you. And again, it will be a great day, and the improvements that have made in accessibility far exceeds what it is currently. But I think, with all due respect, Tom, I love you and I love this project, but to relate it to the City Hall or the library, like you said, everyone comes in that entrance. That's the difference. Everyone comes in that entrance. What we're doing here, maybe we should have closed the front entrance to everyone. I mean, I think the point is, if there is an entrance that because you are challenged, you cannot enter, I think that's the pain they're feeling, that's the disappointment they're feeling. And my father was in a wheelchair for the last 10 years of his life, and I learned so much, and my eyes were opened so much. And sometimes what we thought were handicap parking spaces, in fact, were the farthest away from the entrance. And sometimes they were too small, and you don't know those things until you have to live there. So it will be much, and you're right, and the accessibility is so much greater. I think it's just, for all of us, there's just a sense that we really believe that if we had really put our minds to it, if we really had used creativity, that we could have had access. And the day will come, if someone is arriving to the observatory with a family member or a friend in a wheelchair, they're going to have to make a choice of what entrance they go into. So I just think we can't continue to talk like 99% of the people are happy, because that's not what ADA is about, and that's not what this country or this city is about, is making 99% happy. The point is, no matter who you are, no matter what physical challenges you have, no matter what color you are, no matter what race you are, we're supposed to strive for equality. We're supposed to, it's not about separate entrances or equal. That's what we're supposed to strive for. If you're going to tell me that it's physically impossible, then, that's, and I think that argument was made. But we can't have discussions around here anymore about, you can't make everybody happy and only 99%. This city particularly is a great city, and we're supposed to make equal in everything. And I know we've tried to do that, but we fell a little bit short, and I think that's why we're having this presentation today, and I think that's probably why they will continue to challenge us and continue to be disappointed in the final outcome of the renovation of this great landmark. You don't have to challenge me.
No, I'm not going to challenge you, Ms. Hahn, but when you say physically on Mount Hollywood, at the base where the observatory is built, they took a portion of the east side to put the infrastructure of the air conditioning, of the heating, what do you call it, Gary?
It's called a central plant.
Central plant. Okay, that physically was taken away. On the west side, it was expanded with an elevator and accessibility and a cafe. So there was limits on the size of the mountain. Thank you, and I appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to be heard? Mr. Reyes? Sorry.
Colleagues, I just wanted to rise because I believe this discussion, this dialogue, especially in light of preservation, and speaks to the fact that, Mr. Burt, you're going to have an incredible opportunity to start balancing the issue of equality, not only in physical terms, but in economic terms and class terms and ethnic and color. I know we have a propensity to look at preservation under one light, when in fact it's very dynamic. It varies from neighborhood to neighborhood, and that's going to be our challenge as a city. And I think this project has brought that to the surface in this discussion, so I appreciate the input, but I'm hoping it sets a tone as to how we can start looking at preservation from all its different angles, with all its different opportunities for everyone. And so I just appreciate the hard work that we have essentially been exposed to, and it is about the education of our future generations and access. So thank you for your hard work, and I think it's been a healthy discussion.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Just a footnote I'd like to get. How much money have we spent on this whole renovation of the structure?
The whole project is $93 million.
And would it have, could we have made it wheelchair accessible the way Dorothy wants it, or not?
I do not believe that it would have been possible to make it accessible on the north entrance as she has described. I don't believe you could have put the ramps in as she describes, and then when you got there, you could not have gotten people in the front doors.
Did we get other opinions on that from people who deal with people with disabilities around the nation to help us through on that issue?
Relied on our architectural team, which has, in fact, national expertise, as well as all of the agencies that are required to review this within the city. We did not solicit independent commentary from around the country.
So for $93 million, we got everything but that opportunity, just because we felt it was impractical or unable to be done, or what?
I believe the architects evaluated the potential for that solution and concluded it was not possible.
Not possible. Anybody else want to comment on that, Gary?
I was just going to say the architect is here, so she can answer it.
Oh, please. Yeah, I mean, we live in the year 2006.
Right.
Can't we come up with strategies and techniques and opportunity? We spent $93 million. I mean, we're asking just to get a wheelchair up. Is it impossible?
We should clarify that $93 million is the project budget. The construction budget was 40? 45, 50, whatever.
Okay, well...
Just to clarify, because it's a number that
Sure.
people use, and I
All
think
right.
it's important to clarify.
40 to 50 million on the construction?
Exactly,
All right.
exactly. We spent a lot of time working on this project, thinking about balancing preservation issues and accessibility issues, and we did look at access to the front door. The front steps are character-defining features of the building, like it or not, they are. And it is a split level of steps. You go up certain number of steps to a landing, more steps. The top layer of the landing is engaged by the building, so it's set into the building itself. So we would have to demolish all that, extend the steps, make it one continuous landing, and then find a way to ramp up to get to those historic doors, which, as Dr. Krupp described, are heavy bronze and glass doors, which there is no power assist mechanism capable of opening them. So we looked at all of that, conscientiously evaluated it, and we developed a system of looking at a sloped walkway on either side to see whether we could slip it in and get up the 5.5 feet to this new level landing. And as I said, it would take 110 running lineal feet on both sides, east and west, to accomplish that slope walkway. That would take us off the site, basically.
I see. Now, the way people with disability can get in, can they get up to the top and through a side door and look down then at least?
Yeah, it's not even a side door. I mean, that's what I'd like to say is unlike City Hall and unlike the Richard Riordan Library, the access points are on the north side, the same size as the historic door. The accessibility is within 100 feet, and you all enter through the same elevation, which is the north elevation. So it is very dissimilar, actually. And I was the architect on City Hall, so I know that.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right. Anybody else? Mr. Labange, did you want to hear it again? Okay. Nobody else wishes to be heard. This is not an action item today. This is a presentation, so there is no vote and there is no receiving and filing or noting and filing of this. We will go to the next item next. Thank you very much.
Next item, Mr. President, is item number 19, and that was called special by Councilmember Gruhl.
Ms. Gruhl.
Mr. President, if I could have staff from DOT, I know I saw someone here. Oh, sorry, right in front of me. Colleagues, as you know, rapid dissemination of accurate and obviously timely information to our commuters is one of the easiest and most effective ways, I believe, in allowing us to keep traffic moving in Los Angeles. After all, that's sometimes the number one reason why we have our radios on in the morning, is to find out what our options are relative primarily to the freeway system where we listen in the morning. We're obviously working on some short-term traffic solutions, our synchronization of lights, our banning road construction during rush hour, and also some of the increase in ticket fees that we're going to have for specific areas. I'd like to ask staff is to just explain and an opportunity to educate not only my colleagues but most importantly the public the kind of information, as we talked about in committee, that we're now providing and presenting to the public that is accessible in coordination with Caltrans and MTA, and that even some private firms may use it to communicate via email or other types of ways. So if I could just hold my time, ask you to, John, just to give a little bit of background.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilmember Gruhl. John Fisher, Department of Transportation. In the report, we identify several ways that we communicate with the public regarding traffic conditions. We've used the high technology of our ATSAC system to give out information. One is in the form of changeable message signs. We have 18 of those, primarily in the area around Staples Center, along the Santa Monica Freeway corridor, and in the Hollywood area. And if you're on the road and there's a special situation ahead, if the freeway's jammed or if Highland Avenue is closed for whatever reason, maybe due to a Hollywood Bowl event, you can get that information and then alter your travel plans. We also have a website, which is an outgrowth of our ATSAC system, which simplifies all the complex data we have coming in and shows the travel speeds on different streets. And anyone can go to our website, trafficinfo.lacity.org, and click on the particular area you're interested in and look at the travel speeds and decide if you want to take a certain route, if you want to take Victory Boulevard or Roscoe or Sherman Way, or decide to take the freeway. But we're also working on new things as well. And one of the new things we're working on is consolidating our database of information with that of Caltrans and that of the MTA. Caltrans operates the freeways, MTA operates the bus system, and so we're working with them on a common database that the public can access, and we believe that during the month of September that will be available, one common database. And then we're also working with the private sector where they can add value to some of the information which is already made available free for charge. They can customize information. And a good example of that is Traffic Gauge, where they've built into a handheld device where you can see congestion information on the freeway network. There could be other providers that could customize data for specific users. So we will make information available to them for free, but they can then take it and customize it and make it valuable for a specific clientele. And then also, we'll be adding a touch screen to our Caltrans building, and we'll be looking to add a touch screen to other civic offices as well. And then finally, we will be trying to hire a public information officer to give it a more personal touch to get the information out there to the media.
Well, thank you, John. And obviously, information is knowledge and power. And as a commuter, when you have that information, you can make some changes to your commute time. And as you said, the technology is moving so quickly that even some of the private sector companies may take the information we provide you. And if they know my commute, which days or you have and my schedule is probably not a normal schedule, but people who go to a particular location every single day, they would be able to email them, which I understand at some point, to indicate to them not to go this particular route today because of a traffic accident on a street, and include even that on the freeway. So I think we're very excited about that. Now, one of the things we've also talked about as you hire this public information officer that this council approved in our budget, is the issue relative to having commuters help share the information with us as well. You know, so if you are driving down the street and, you know, sometimes your first interaction is to call if it's an emergency in 911, but maybe it's just a minor traffic accident, there's nothing that happened, but it is changed that traffic pattern. Is there a way now that they can communicate that information to the Department of Transportation? Is it through 311 or?
Yeah, there is a way they can call 311, and we can communicate it to the ATSAC Center, and so there's a way of doing that. Okay. But we're going to be exploring other ways that maybe it could be a little bit more quick and direct.
Great. Well, I just want to thank the department, and again, this is just a little bit of what we plan to do in the future of communicating with commuters as to the best way to get to their location, and hopefully we'll get some of them to also take public transportation to get in that location as well. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. Our next speaker is Mr. Reyes.
Thanks for all your hard work. In this city, we have a large transit-dependent population base that, again, I go back to the themes of communication, language, diversity, in our ability to inform folks as to their knowledge, how to inform them in terms of getting to the bus lines, getting to we have the rapid bus system on major corridors like on Wilshire. How are we addressing that challenge? In this city, we have a tremendous reverse migration. You have a large number of people migrating to the west side to take care of a lot of the jobs that are there, but many of them are transit dependent. Many folks are jumping on cars, they're sharing rides because the cost of gas, the economics is such that they can't afford the gas the way they used to. How are you looking at those dynamics within the city?
We provide transit information in a number of ways, Councilman Reyes. If it's general information, you can go to our website, and it will describe the type of transit services we provide, as well as the specific transit lines in a particular area. With regard to, let's say, some of the higher forms of efficient transit, our Metro Rapid system that we coordinate with the MTA. Actually, they're the lead, but we help make it more rapid. At many of the bus stops, we're putting in information that says next bus, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, so that in real time they can know when the next bus is going to arrive. And then we're working with the MTA on having this common database where you can have freeway information, surface street information, information from other agencies, as well as transit information that will be available to people who want to access it in real time.
In the Spanish-speaking radio and television stations, would you consider looking at their public service announcement points in terms of informing people about their options? dash systems in certain places, I know we're bursting at the seams, and others, they could be used more strategically if folks knew they connected to other main lines. This is the kind of information that we should be putting out there. Many folks don't have access to computers, but we believe it or not, they have access to computers at the libraries because of their income levels. Again, access to the public service announcements and the radio stations, television stations, and Spanish-speaking media. I believe those would be the type of efforts that could perhaps engage those who are transit-dependent in the city and expand our universe, if you will, and how we communicate with those groups.
That certainly is a very good point, and we'll be looking at our public information officer to help us communicate with the media and help us to determine how best to communicate in other languages.
Could you send to my office who are your contact people in these different stations? If you have them, if you don't, maybe we can help facilitate that type of dialogue, if maybe cooperation, and raise the level of information and for those who are transit dependent. Thank you.
We'll be glad to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Nobody else wishes to be heard on this? Is it a note and file item, or is this an action item? Oh, committee report, excuse me. So let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 23, call special vote by Councilmember Padilla.
Mr. Padilla, we have item number 23 before us, Mr. Padilla. Item number 23.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is there staff here on item 23? I guess the main question I had is, colleagues, this is a motion that I brought in when we were going through the budget this last year in recognition of the infrastructure bond measure package that's going to appear on the November ballot, and with the not line item, but a dedicated amount due to come to the City of Los Angeles should the measures pass, to the amount of $127 million for street repair. I proposed that we establish a policy for how we would spend that money, because we do have some flexibility and latitude as written by the legislature into the bond. Were we going to simply divide the money by 15? Should we distribute the money based on need, recommendations from the department, et cetera? Are we going to limit the use of the money to strictly street resurfacing? Were we going to allow for reconstruction of streets, expanded to include sidewalks, street lights, et cetera? I brought in this motion to ask for the staff to take a crack at crafting a policy for how we would spend that money. And I guess my first question, Mr. Miller, Mr. CLA, is the agenda, the item before us today, is there a draft policy in place yet, or is this simply the council acting on the motion to instruct you to create that policy?
Well, this is actually simply the council instructing us to go forward, but we have already established the task force. We're working with Street Services and BOE to start developing that so that we can bring it back to you.
Okay, and I know there's been 2 committee hearings on this motion, one in Public Works, one in Budget and Finance. Are there at least some initial thoughts, some previews to the report coming back in terms of what elements the policy could contain?
Well, I think what we're going to present is some of the options that were considered, and we will present recommendations. I'm hesitant to kind of share because we're, as you indicated, there's discussion about dividing by 15 and whether that in fact meets where the direct needs are. There's the identification of the streets in the areas with the most need. We're also looking at other potential funding sources and what Prop A and C can be used for and what this might be used for, et cetera. So we're going to present to you, I think, kind of the global look, and then we'll have specific recommendations.
Okay, just 2 more quick questions. One is, have you begun to discuss or at least consider broadening the scope of what this money can be used for? I mentioned in the motion, is it up to us to limit it to just street resurfacing, or can street reconstruction or new construction of streets be included? Can we expand it to include street lighting issues or sidewalk work?
As it's drafted, there's a fair amount of flexibility, so we certainly will enter that into the discussions about whether it makes sense to, and what the impact would be about expanding the potential uses of the money.
Okay. And then lastly, what's the time frame we're on for a report to come back to committee for consideration?
We certainly could get back to you by October 1st, potentially even sooner, but we want to provide sufficient time for the debate here in the event that it does pass in early November.
That's 3 months from now. I would hope they can come back sooner.
We could come back, we could try to come back to you directly after the recess, which would be first week in September.
First week after the recess. Yeah. Okay. Have a happy Labor Day.
Pardon me?
Have a happy Labor Day. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Padilla. Our Chair of Intergovernment Relations Committee, Mr. Smith, and then our Chair of Transportation Committee, Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you. And one thing I mentioned earlier to staff, and I didn't see it anywhere in the report, we have a large amount of money coming from Safety Lou, which is a 5-year window to spend it in, and we have a 20% match requirement. Those are all transportation related. This money is transportation related. If we could tie those together by using some of this money from the state bond to pay the 20% on the Safety Lou money, we're getting double bang for our bucks. We're funding all of our Safety Lou projects without any general fund, Prop C, Prop A expenditures whatsoever. And so I really think we ought to look at those as our first priority, because those are projects that if we don't get our 20% match, we lose the projects. And we've already been authorized the federal money. We're in year 2 now of Safety Lou. We haven't funded one project yet. There's a great opportunity to get real bang for our buck. So I'd appreciate you look into that, see how much money we need for our 20% match on Safety Lou projects, and see if we couldn't fund some of that through this money to really expand the value of our dollars. Okay?
We will include that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Ms. Gruhl.
I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Smith about using this money to leverage it and to make sure that we're using it wisely, because it's not often, and again, we are all hopeful, cautiously optimistic about this passing in November, but also to be ready to spend it. And as we know, with Safety Lou and the money that we received this last time, as we looked at the carpool lane and we're going to the state, I mean, it all is interconnected. Literally and figuratively, of how we need to get these funds and be competitive when we go the next time. Not only keep the money that we have now, but when we go back to Congress, and I know we're also talking internally about having a list of actual proposals that we would put forward to Congress, because we've all had some effective Congress members who've put some things in there, but it may have not been everyone's top priority, and we could even leverage the dollars more. So I think Mr. Smith is right that this is an opportunity not only today to help those Safety Lou projects, but also in the future to be competitive, because they want to see that we've actually spent the money, that we've had our 20% match, and they are more likely to add in additional projects for us in the future based on the experience they've had with the City of Los Angeles. My only amendment to this was to ask on the report just that it come back to the T committee as well.
Thank you.
So,
is there any objection to that?
Have a
If not,
second.
that'll be accepted. If there's no objection, it'll be accepted
Okay.
as friendly. Okay. Mr. Rosendahl.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this moment because, frankly, it's the beginning of a very serious effort to have mass transit infrastructure in the Southland. It's been a total disaster the last dozen years. It's only been getting worse. But with the bond measure coming on in November that the governor and the mayor and others have worked on, there'll be billions of dollars for Southern California. Exactly how many billions isn't clear at this point. But what's important, Jerry, is for us to come up with what we think would make the most sense from a infrastructure standpoint to get mass transit going. What will you be doing to figure this out for us, and what's the timetable in getting back to us and so on?
Well, again, we've formed the task force, and we'll be getting back to you now directly after the recess. Again, with incorporating all of this discussion, using it as a match, the potential for expanding it to include other things, looking at funding sources, because not all money is fungible.
Right.
And some money is more restricted than others. So I think it's a matter of prioritizing what the needs are and trying to match those with the various money sources that we have available.
Mm-hmm. Of course, you know that the Green Line needs to get into the airport, which has never been done, and I'm demanding that we do a good feasibility study of how we make the Green Line go into the airport. Also needs to go down the coast to the Galleria in Redondo Beach and come on up Lincoln Boulevard and go into the Expo line that will be in Santa Monica. We need to get that Red Line subway under Wilshire, and we obviously need to expedite the Expo line. These are three very important infrastructure projects near and dear to my heart. So I look forward to seeing your analysis of this, and I hope they're part of that package, because when we go to the polls in November, the people need to know that that money will be spent directly in helping us get some relief out of the horrendous gridlock we have in Southern California. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes.
Colleagues, we are all standing to talk about how important transportation as we should be, and I need to put my cards on the table in terms of our sense of priorities. But in the areas that cover the central area, we not only have the 40,000 people per square mile, when the city average is 6,000 to 7,000, but we also are in the middle of a regional traffic pattern. Just for example, just right around City Hall, in the mornings we have the folks are being moved from the courts to the jail to the various containment areas. We have bus loads that are congesting our streets right around this periphery. We have 4 new high schools being built just on the other side of the Harbor Freeway, just outside of downtown. We have massive structures being built for housing along the rail stations. So how we start alleviating this pressure is going to be critical in our connection to the land use patterns and the role and function of space as it relates to the transportation network. So when we talk about why we are in this position, well, there was a time we had the luxury to say the farther away we are from the center, the better off we would be. But now we have an implosion of new development, new housing in the central area of Los Angeles, and how we start connecting these densities to the notion of alleviating traffic is going to be key. So I understand we have very strong and I think fantastic ideas to connect to the beach, to do the subways. We can't forget what it takes to move people around in all these neighborhoods that have these high densities. In Chinatown, we never have enough parking, but we have traffic coming off the passenger freeway. Businesses are dying because there is no parking. So we have to talk about how we connect the lifeblood of many of our commercial corridors and respective neighborhoods as we move towards these strategies. So again, I put that on the table as Chair of Planning, Land Use and Management in continuing to work with my colleague in Transportation Committee, but the connection to these two disciplines is very critical. And again, this is the time to start articulating those points of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have the item before us as amended with friendly amendments. If we can prepare the roll, please, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Mr. Huizar, did you still want to take the other item out of order first, 35, or are you ready for number 32?
I'm ready from 32.
Okay, and
The
Ms.
chair of the-
Perry, yeah, under our council rules, the chair of E2 wanted to go first, so we'll recognize Ms. Perry, and then we'll come right back to you, Mr. Huizar.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions and would request the DWP and the CAO come to the table. This is your CAO?
I'm with DWP.
DWP CAO. In committee earlier, I had introduced a motion that urged the board to ensure that contracts for professional services related to Owens Dry Lake Dust Mitigation Program executed prior to completion of the audit of previous contracts be written such that the audit findings could be implemented within the context of those contracts. And I wanted to know if any of you can let us know when the audit will be ready.
Yes, the audit is being conducted right now, and there is a two hard deadlines. One is on July 28th, later this month, which is the preliminary report.
That's the expiration of the contract date?
No, that is the external audit. It just happens to fall on the same day as the CH contract. But this is with a firm called GCAP. They are performing the external audit on the program and on CH Tooham Hill. They'll have a preliminary report done July 28th, and then a final report done October 30th of this year.
So are you anticipating that both of the audit and the expiration of the contract nearly coincide within a few days?
I think that was just kind of happenstance. And the bigger context on this was the CH Tooham Hill contract had a expiration date back in April, but with a 2-year extension that would have been put in effect by approval by the board and by this council. And our board did not want to do that, and they instead directed staff to go out and rebid all the elements of the contract into 5 separate contracts. So they had already said to try to exert more control over the program and control costs with this one contractor to go out and actually rebid on a competitive basis. And that process has been done.
Well, is there any detrimental outcome that could result if we do extend the contract for just 30 days to allow time for the audit to be received?
Well,
is there a downside to that?
There is a downside because the contract ends on July 28th. And
but if we extend it for 30 days to allow time for the audit to come in with its recommendations, give us a cushion of time, is there some downside to that?
I don't think we can get that done by the end of the month, by July 28th.
Okay,
it would have to go back up to our
down?
board, and then back down to your commission, or to your subcommittee, and then down to here.
Get what done? The contract extension?
The contract extension changed to 1 month. Right now, it's to go to the end of the calendar year.
What would be the process that's so convoluted that you couldn't get a contract extension for 30 days?
Well, our board meets on, this would go, a change like this would go to their July 25th meeting,
Okay.
and that would leave.
And then what if I expedite my committee meeting and have it that afternoon if you go in the morning? Would that give you the cushion?
Could be. There's other probably more practical issues involved. One of the more important things that the contract provides is actual field labor operating the dust control measures out there. We've got nearly $300 million worth of infrastructure out there that needs to be operated. And these guys are hired, some local, some out of town, and to say that they only have a 30-day contract, I would imagine most of them will just walk and try to get on their job. And we don't have the forces outside of this contract able to run Owens Lake.
Okay, well, but you don't know that for sure, and they're already employed.
We had an issue before, when it was getting very close to guys wanting to quit, drop tools, and get off the job.
Okay,
And
well,
I mean, those are
I don't have any reason to believe or disbelieve that. I don't have anything before me today to base a decision on that by conjecture.
Sure.
So, all I have is what's here on the record. So other than conjecture, is there any other issue that would arise if we ask this to be extended, as long as I make sure that I expedite a date for you on committee so that it goes through quickly, and then maybe with the committee date, put a placeholder in council so it just goes right in, boom, boom, boom?
just for 30 days?
Yes.
Other than just those practical things of managing a huge program like that on a month-to-month basis, structurally...
Just give us time to get the audit in. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the other options...
It's not going to be on an ongoing basis. Once the audit's in, then that'll take care of that.
Right. I mean, there is within the contract a 30-day cancellation provision without cause that allows that to happen. And the whole idea for this was that the contract is already, in a sense, being eliminated and being replaced by 5 new contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And what the idea of this external audit was to take those recommendations and then put them into these new contracts. And so the only reason to extend the CH contract is to provide a process where we're not out of sync, where we don't have a contractor available to us. So we already have contracts ready to be put in place, and our board decided, and when we came with our previous amendment, the idea was to take the recommendations of the audit and put it into these new contracts, and then award those new contracts and cancel the one that we're under now. And so in effect, that process of getting rid of the current contract is already in place. And you'll have the opportunity then the opportunity will exist then to take those audit recommendations and put them in the new contracts.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. President, I just want to say that to the body, by amending the existing contract, or extending rather than awarding new contracts, I think that we address the issue of ensuring that audit findings can be incorporated within new terms. What I am highly uncomfortable with is, again, we're dealing with conjecture, information that's not formally on the record. I don't like setting a precedent like this. I would prefer that you work within the committee council system so that we can document every step of the way. I don't think I'm asking for that much. Just something substantive to give us time to make sure that the clear pathway for incorporating audit findings, and if the audit reveals something that we should correct or something negative, then we have, if I don't extend the time, then we don't have that gateway still open unless there is an open clause to terminate the contract.
Yeah, again, the 30 days is just such a tight window, I think, because if you, and our board had pretty much the same question.
Is there an open clause? Is there an open clause?
To terminate the contract?
Yes, if the audit reveals, say for example, the audit reveals something that's negative, is there an open clause in the contract?
Yes, in fact, you can cancel without any cause. And we went through the same kind of exercise with our board, and to do the 30 days and have to every time come through this loop then is difficult, because if we extended it then to August 28th, then in the middle of that month, we have to go back to our board to extend it, give us a provision to go another 30 days.
Let me just reiterate, the time frame, I think, is not significant. I think I've already laid out for you that I believe we can work it out and not be detrimental to the process. So that continued argument, I think, is erroneous, because we can expedite it, we can have a placeholder for you, get it through committee and to council. So I'm going to hold my position, and I don't have anything further to say.
Thank you. We have Mr. Huizar, Mr. Labange, Mr. Parks, and Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Huizar.
Thank you very much. What was the purpose of the performance audit? Well, first of all, let me say that I called this special as well, and I concur with what the chair of this committee was saying, because as I read this, I saw that the performance audit hadn't been completed, yet we were extending this for a large amount of money. So wasn't the purpose of the performance audit unit to say, well, let's hold up, let's see what's here, and then decide whether we want to go ahead or not?
Well, the Board of Audit Commissioners has already decided to cancel this contract, okay? They decided that way back at the beginning of the year, and they directed staff to go out and rebid all of the elements of this contract. And so that has happened. One of those contracts has already been awarded, the construction management.
Hold my time, please.
And the other four went through the process, and the contractors have been selected for that. And the purpose then is to receive the recommendations from this outside performance contract and infuse those recommendations into these contracts if they're applicable, and then award those, thereby giving the city government the ability to then exert more control, extra control on the Owens Lake dust mitigation program. That was the purpose of the board wanting to do that.
And how long is this contract for, and for how much?
Well, the contract we're under right now, if extended, would go through the end of the year and would add another $2.6 million.
$2.6 million, okay. And what was the amount of the original contract?
The amount of the contract right now is $90 million, so this would take it up to $92.6.
The dust mitigation program, that wasn't about $120 million originally? Is that?
Well, okay, I'm sorry, I answered the question. That's how much the CH2M Hill contract was. When the idea of solving the problem at Owens Lake was brought back in '98, it was brought in as I believe, $120 million program.
Okay. And how much have we expended to date?
We've expended probably about $380 million or so.
I got a figure of $500 million. Is that more accurate?
That's not correct.
Over $400 million, probably?
In establishing the dust control measures out in the lake, that's the number. So we've, for the past 3 years, put out a number of $415 million in capital to construct all the dust control measures out on the lake.
Well, I'm just concerned that, given the original amount estimated for this contract being about 100, well, this program, 120, now we're over 400 million, and now we're extending it when there's a performance audit going on, and we haven't even completed that yet. We're extending it more. I would feel a lot more comfortable if we did complete the audit, have time for the DWP and the council and the public to review what's there, and then decide to go forward or not. Perhaps we could do a month-to-month so that we extend and do the work we have to do, perform our obligations to this mitigation program, and then come back and give us sufficient time to do the performance audit. I'm uncomfortable when anybody in the city would say that it's too complicated of a procedurally to do a process within 30 days. When we're talking about money that we need to expend and we want to make sure we're expending that properly, I don't care what we have to do as long as we follow the rules and guidelines of the city. I don't think anything could be as complicated as that. Special commission meetings could be called, special committee meetings could be called. We'll come here if we have to in order to make sure we do this properly. I would support, I think I didn't completely follow Ms. Perry's recommendation, but I would support us perhaps doing a month-to-month and then come back and give Ms. Perry's committee sufficient time to review the performance audit before we go forward. And finally, my last question is, I understand that negotiations are underway to expand the city's obligation by another 9 square miles. And are there any new commitments in terms of cost, and how are we going to expend the funds for those new costs?
Well, there is a process under the law where the city can be it can be determined that we need to do extra miles, and that process has gone through. We're in the midst of appealing that process. On one hand, on the other hand, we're also into mediated negotiations with the Air District that regulates us up in the Owens Valley. Those are ongoing right now, and hopefully we can find a much better solution in some middle ground position.
Do we know how much that's going to cost us?
Well, if we would have to keep going to that 9 square miles, it could be up to $100 million. And what we're trying to do is negotiate a settlement that is much, much lower than that.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Labange is our next speaker, but we'll go with Mr. Parks first. Mr. Parks?
Thank you, Mr. President. Sir, I didn't quite get a clear understanding of your response to Mrs. Perry about why the month-to-month would be a problem. Excuse me, would be a problem. Could you explain that?
Sure. We are operating 20 square miles of dust control measures up at the lake, and we're constructing another 10 square miles.
You speak right in that mic.
Sure. We're operating and constructing at the same time. Those are things that are happening real time with this contract, assisting us doing that. And so we've got actual field workers out there that have to know whether they have a job next month, and if not, there's other work that they can go do. So it's difficult getting labor up there and keeping labor on the job. We also have regulatory commitments month to month where we have to monitor and report on water quality, on bird surveys, and we need to have those people in place working there day to day. So
could you hold my time?
Just a couple examples. We also are under construction, and CH2M Hill is the engineer of record, and we need to have them kind of as a seamless kind of transition from day to day, from month to month. And it's I'm just telling you, from a program manager's perspective, it's very difficult to operate like that on a month-to-month basis. It's difficult for a contractor to then plan and have resources to serve the city of Los Angeles adequately if they only have a month-to-month contract on something this big.
But the original proposal was what, 6 months extension?
The one that's before you now is 5 months.
5 months. What would be the significant difference from a month-to-month or a 5-month?
A 5-month, when they receive that, it allows them to plan for that 5 months, and then within that time, what's going to happen then is the results of the performance audit will go into new contracts. They know that at the end of that 5 months that the contract is over, and they can plan accordingly for that, and then we can pick up the work on the new contracts.
But this is a company that we spent, what, $90 million with?
Yes.
And we're saying that after spending 90 million, they would be uncomfortable at going month to month as opposed to a 5-month?
It's just there's practical difficulties
I mean,
performing that.
is that our assessment, or is that something they've told us?
That's my assessment.
Okay, so we've not talked with them about a month to month or any variations of that?
No.
Okay. How often do you meet with them in the sense of discussing either this 5-month extension or the potential other variations that might come about?
Well, I'm in daily contact. I mean, they work directly for us on a day-to-day basis, talking about contracting issues. That doesn't happen every day, no.
Okay.
I mean,
And this is the project, I think, a while back, we said we thought several years ago 120 million, and now we're saying up almost 400?
415 million in capital.
Okay. And this is something that we're saying may cost us 40 million a year just to maintain?
Yes.
Okay. And we're within a couple of weeks from an audit that everybody's been waiting for to see what the issues are really about, how much money and what we could project?
Well, it's a preliminary audit, and quite frankly, we shouldn't get our hopes up that there's going to be a lot revealed in that preliminary audit. There's a final audit then that comes out October 30th.
See, now that disturbs me. Let me ask this CLA to come up, please. We put a motion in back in December so that we wouldn't be here several months later, and we asked the CAO and the CLA to oversee the objectivity of the audit, and because we didn't want to get to the point and say it was preliminary and it wouldn't tell us anything.
Well, it
And
will
so-
tell you something, but it is a preliminary audit, so it won't have all of the recommendations in there. You'll have a preliminary view of what they've seen in their first 60 days.
Okay. Mr. Miller, could you tell us, have you had a hands-on this as we directed on that motion and where we are on that audit?
It's my understanding, in fact, that motion is actually still in committee. It was not adopted. But we fully expect that when the audit comes back, we will be looking at it.
So you've not been actively involved?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. All right. So the key then is that that's a little different than we perceived it, in the sense that you or the CAO were going to take an active role as the audit was unfolding versus reviewing what they produced.
Yeah, Ms. So was reminding me, there was a subsequent instruction, rather than overseeing it now, to report back after the audit is done. So in answer to your question, no, we have not had a direct involvement to date. We expect, certainly, we will have such an involvement when the audit is delivered.
Okay. Let me say, colleague, I think this is an issue that we need to support the request of Ms. Perry that we extend this for a month-to-month. I think we need to get input from the company for them to say no after getting $90 million, that they choose not to work on a month-to-month, versus us suspecting that they won't. And then move forward and find out, hopefully, that we get more than a preliminary audit and we get some information to know how we're going to move forward, because we're talking about literally tens of millions of dollars over the next several years.
We need to, before we hear from Mr. Labange, Mr. Rosendahl, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Cardenas, and Ms. Perry for a second time, we have a clarification about which actions we can actually take today. It's my understanding we can only do an up or down vote on this, but Mr. City Attorney, could you speak to that?
Yes, that's correct. It's an up or down vote on this item because it's a long-term contract coming from another board. So council can only approve it or disapprove it.
Madam Clerk, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yes, and the committee report says to concur with the board's action, and if the council chooses not to do that, there would have to be a substitute motion introduced, and it can be a verbal.
It can be a verbal, so.
Yes, it can be a verbal motion to disapprove the board's action.
But again, it could only be a disapproval or approval. Okay. Mr. Labange is our next speaker.
This has a couple of questions there, Rich. How big, if this is 395, we're standing on 395 right now, and we're looking what would be east, but I know I'm pointing west right here. How big is Owens Lake?
Well, it's 110 square miles.
110. Los Angeles is 472 square miles, so it's like from here to maybe Santa Monica. What's 15? 15 miles to Santa Monica, so
Yeah.
10 times 10. whatever. So that's the space that we're talking about on this issue here. And it was Owens Lake a terminal lake, or, which means, what's a terminal lake mean?
Well, the Owens River just flowed in and terminated in Owens. The Owens River terminated in Owens Lake.
There was no outflow?
Correct.
Okay, good. And did that cause some of the environmental problems too, that it was just a terminal lake?
It's a terminal lake, and so what happens is the water evaporates and leaves back the salts on the dry playa, and that's what gets kicked up in the air when there's high winds.
Right. Now, and CH2M Hill is doing the work, not just the study, right?
They're just providing basically the engineering behind it. They're not constructing.
$92 million of engineering?
Well, there's a lot more. There's engineering, there's operations, there's research that goes on, there's environmental permitting, and there's has been construction management.
Right. Is there a like project like this in the country?
I think this is probably the largest environmental project of its kind.
Okay, good. Thank you for those questions answered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. Mr. Rosendahl, then Mr. Padilla, Mr. Cardenas, Ms. Grewal, Ms. Berry.
Thank you, Mr. President. To me, it sounds like throwing money down a rat hole. Do we have an exit strategy on this? When will we be completed on this?
That is the question, and there's a regulation that basically says that, and the city signed an agreement that said we'd be responsible for that, and it'll be done when all the areas of the lake are controlled. We've done 30 square miles. The district is on record in multiple places saying that they think that it's 40 square miles will complete it.
Who's the district?
The district is basically it's the air quality control district up in the valley. They are in charge of managing the airshed for Inyo, Mono, and Alpine counties.
Yeah, we pay them, right?
We pay their annual fees, yeah.
So it's in their best interest to keep adding more miles and things like that? I mean, it goes from 1 mile to 2 miles to, I mean, it goes from 125 million to almost 400 million?
Yes, it did.
So what are we trying to accomplish?
Well, the city agreed that they were responsible for causing the air problem at Owens Lake, and what we're trying to accomplish is to bring the air quality into compliance with the federal standards.
So what did we do to change the air quality?
What we did is we suppressed the dust from being kicked up off of the Owens Lake Playa by a variety of dust control methods.
Has there been a technical review every year to see if it's working and doing anything?
Well, there's a practical review, and we are in compliance, and what we've done works absolutely perfectly, and that's basically quoted from the district. We are in compliance, meeting our milestones, and we have reduced dust on Owens Lake commensurate with the amount of work we've done out there. I mean, it's working.
Well, explain to me. I mean, look, I'm not a scientist or anything, but we have hot weather, we have deserts. We suck that water out to serve the Southland, and then obviously it becomes dry and arid and dusts blow. So what are we doing there now? Just spraying this dust down?
What we're doing is on most of the surfaces, we're wetting the surface and basically making mud out of the surface, and mud doesn't blow dust. And about 4 square miles of it, we're actually growing a plant that's indigenous to the area called saltgrass, which basically foils the air and allows that dust is not kicked up in the air.
All right, so you make the mud, and then it gets real hot, and then the mud dries, and then you have dust again, right?
No, we continually apply water.
So you're constantly applying water.
Yes, sir.
Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and it's costing us a minimum of $40 million a year, right?
It costs about $20 million in water and about $15 million in operations.
So about 40
labor,
million.
About 35, and then other fees to the district brings it
So
up
when
to
we had the DWP
40.
guy come here way back when, a guy named Jerry
Gaby.
Yeah, he figured the whole thing would cost about $120 million, right?
That was the number. 120 million was to get you about 20 square miles. It wasn't to complete the job. The fine print on that was in 2003, the district would come out with yet more areas to control. And in fact, that did happen. So
And that district will continue to do that. Isn't it in their best interest to keep themselves engaged in this insanity?
well, they can only do it on areas that contribute to breaking the national standard for dust. And so they can't just make us do things that doesn't need to be done. It has to be tied with air quality.
To me, it's throwing money down the rat hole, and I certainly support Jan Perry in extending it for a while.
Mr. Padilla.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. I know somebody asked earlier, I'm just forgetting your response, when the full audit is expected to be completed?
October 30th of this year.
October 30th, okay. And then I know this has been alluded to, by some directly, by some indirectly. A lot of headlines, about a year ago, maybe a little bit more than that, about this particular engineering firm and the work they've been doing on this contract. Other than the audit, which we're waiting to see the final results of on October 30th, anything else that's been proven or has given specific grounds for problems, concerns?
Well, actually, the contract's been audited twice already by the Internal Audit Division at Water and Power, and there have been no substantive findings that would cause us to want to cancel that contract.
Okay. I just think it's important to recognize that, clearly and succinctly. I know they're big dollar figures that we're talking about. It should cause anybody to think twice when we're talking about these kinds of dollar figures. But as Mr. Labange sort of discovered it through his line of questioning, there's no comparable public works project like this in the country. And if this is an obligation that the City of Los Angeles willfully, knowingly entered into, then we have to live up to that obligation. Thank you.
Mr. Cardenas.
Is this a CH2M Hill project or is this a DWP project?
This is a DWP project.
So CH2M Hill is not in charge up there?
They're not in charge.
They're basically implementing by the directive of DWP and our engineers and whatever analysis of whoever else we hired to figure out how we're going to mitigate this, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's one of the things I need to help clear up with my colleagues. When I chaired the committee that oversaw DWP, actually this audit is one of the things that I asked that the Department of Water and Power commence with. And the fact of the matter is we were very confused at the beginning as to whether or not this was a CH2M Hill project or this was a DWP project or who was in charge. The fact that DWP is in charge means that when we get this audit back, they're going to be looking at the entire picture, but they're going to be giving an opinion about what the mitigation measures that CH2M Hill is implementing and whether or not those mitigations are being done properly, if they're being done efficiently, et cetera. That's really what this audit is about. What's looming over our heads as Los Angeles is this project is something we volunteered to do, or is this part of some type of settlement? What was it? My time, please.
In 1998, the city signed an agreement with the Air District, and basically as a settlement, and as I said, that we accepted responsibility to fix the problem at Owens Lake.
So are we truly in compliance if we put a freeze on the activity up there?
Only to the extent that we can't operate the lake with the services that we need from CH2M Hill. If we aren't able to provide those services, then there are fines that can be levied on us because if we can't operate...
What are those fines?
At a minimum, I think if it was a willful violation like that, it would be at least $25,000, and if...
$25,000 a day, a month?
A day. And that's just from the state, from the district, and then I think there's about an equal amount that could be assessed by the federal government as well.
Okay, so the bottom line is we got ourselves into this situation. We're the only entity on the hook, correct? I mean, not me, because I would have never signed it. When the city of Los Angeles signed this and agreed to this by the recommendation of the then head of the Department of Water and Power, they were guesstimating that it might be as much as $150 million, but it really wasn't discussed. I'm saying this now. I found out that it really wasn't discussed on the city council, that I think it was Parsons who actually did a study and said that it could be as much as $430 million. But when it was proposed to the council, an amount of about $130 or $150 million was in front of the council as to what the estimate was. So it didn't seem all that bad for all of the responsibilities that we have here. But the fact of the matter is we are now crossing the $400 million mark, correct?
Yes, sir.
Correct. Then is that because of CH2M Hill, or is that because of what we agreed to do in 1998?
It's a result of what we agreed to do being a big thing to do, and big things cost a lot of money.
And this big thing was a big unknown at the time, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so basically we were charting on new ground, we're charting on new technology, on new engineering, on new mitigation standards, correct?
Yes, sir.
As far as implementation standards. The reason why I'm going through all this, I wish I had more time, is because I don't like the fact that we're spending over $400 million. We spent a lot of hours in the committee over the years going over those facts and how we got here. But the problem is we're here. We have an agreement, we have a responsibility, and we're going to get fined as much as $25,000 or more a day if we willfully stop activity over there. I don't think at this point in time CH2M Hill is the bad guy or not. But what I am saying is we need to go forward. I'm going to vote for this because we need to. We also have a clause with CH2M Hill that we can cancel it if in fact a preliminary audit shows that they're not doing a good job or an inadequate job, and then we get the final findings in October, we could cancel it at that time anyway. But I don't think it's worth it for us to stop now looking at what's going to happen and the lack of goodwill that we're going to get up north. One thing we need to understand, Angelinos, in Northern California, they don't like Los Angeles. And when it comes to water, that's the #1 issue that they don't like us about. So if we lose goodwill with them, if we stop, they're not going to talk to their neighbors about why we stopped, whether it was a good reason or not. They're just going to say Los Angeles screwed us again, and they stopped doing what they promised to do. We ought to stick it to them. And they will.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Ms. Gruhl is next, then Mr. Reyes and Ms. Perry.
And thank you, Mr. Cardenas, because I know that you have spent a lot of time on this particular issue and had a lot of questions in the past. One question I have, because this did come before committee and we did have some questions, and you look at, I think we all take a deep breath when it is $400 million and it's a $2.6 million for 6 months, et cetera. But the question I have is, if you, let's just say we decided tomorrow to terminate the contract, how long would it take the department to go out to bid and to get someone else to do the work that's been done, being done now?
Sure. If it was a normal process, it would take more than that 30 days. If you ever wanted to do that, you'd probably have to just go out sole source and get somebody to get you by for, 90 days or 120 days to actually get somebody up and running on a competitive basis.
6 months, so either way. And the $400 million, CH2M Hill is just one piece of that, correct?
Correct.
What percentage are they of the 400?
90 million.
90 million of that 400?
Well,
plus.
Roughly, yeah.
And I think, Mr. Cardenas, you mentioned this. I mean, the council at the time was only told that it was 127 million, but in the very fine print, it indicated that the liability was at least that $450 million. It's unfortunate that at the time, again, none of us were here as council members, I believe, when that was voted on at that time. Colleagues, I'd like to ask, because I think there's still some questions and history here and some ability on timing, et cetera, to ask Mr. Deaton as well to be able to come present, to just have it continued one day to do that.
Okay.
I mentioned it to Ms. Perry if she would be willing to do that.
I've been communicated about a couple continuations. We have one for a day, which we will consider at the end of our debate on this. Mr. Reyes is next, and then Ms. Perry. Mr. Reyes.
Well, colleagues, I think half of us were staff persons when this was going on. And I want to make sure we understand that there's a history here. The proportions of real estate are mind-boggling. If you look at a map of California and how much City Valley actually controls, you would think we control half of California, just to cover the right-of-ways for the water to come down to Los Angeles. And so that scale in proportion to the dollars is daunting. For the person who's watching this dialogue is thinking, we just dropped $400 million to Department of Water and Power. How is that possible? Without understanding the context. So thank you, Councilman LaBonge, for putting that into context, and Councilor Cardenas for giving us the historic decisions that got us to this point. But I agree with Councilman Perry. Because it happened that way in the past doesn't mean it has to happen that way in the future. And we have to count every dollar that we're spending out there. But I think it behooves the council to take that trip up the Owens Valley to Mono Lake and understand our infrastructure. If you haven't done it, it's something you should do, because you will see directly what type of influence this body has to the ecosystem, to the economic structure of this state. And there's a reason why a lot of people don't like us, because the impacts of our decisions have had a detrimental effect on many small towns, many watersheds, natural habitats, and that's something we need to deal with. And perhaps it behooves us to get that overview so we can understand why Councilman Perry is very concerned, and I agree with her wholeheartedly. So how we lay this out is going to be critical. But more importantly, let's inform not only the council members who have yet had that opportunity, but the public in general, the impact of our behavior as a city and how we deal with this precious commodity we call water. So I look forward to Ron Dean's presentation and our follow-up, but we should have a tight rein and read all the fine print before we make that next billion-dollar decision. But thank you for your presentation, and I think we do this with the best intention. The notion of accountability is very real, and that's $400 million that we should know what we're doing with and what to expect in the future from our contractors, and we should have that ability to have that oversight. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Perry, to close?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm very comfortable with continuing this tomorrow or even longer if necessary. I think we need to get some facts on the record from someone who's probably in the best position to put them there on behalf of the department. So tomorrow is fine, or if we have to go to July the 25th, that's fine with me too. But
Because
for
of
now,
our own deadlines with
Right.
any initiatives, we have quite a full agenda tomorrow,
Yes.
maybe Friday or Tuesday. would be
whatever
better.
you say.
Okay.
Anyway, continuance is fine.
Okay. We'll work with the department. Let's continue it for now until Friday. We'll work with the department to see if that would be the best time. Mr. Weezer?
We're going to get back how we're going to, I mean, there's some homework here, right, that we're all working on? I'm not sure what we're going to do Friday. I just want to be clear.
Yeah. I think we're going to continue till Friday. We're awaiting the report, so we're hoping, I don't know if it'll be done by Friday, but we're hoping to get that. And then any information in terms of work with the department, any of the council members can be in direct communication to get. I don't know if there's anything specifically.
I would ask the department that to see if they could come back to us with a different recommendation.
Yep.
To do it month to month until we get the performance audit from you and see what we come up with there.
And again, in terms of action, colleagues, I mean, we can ask for more information, but we can only do either an up or down vote. If we send it back, then obviously that is a different context. We have, Mr. City Attorney, we have until what date on this?
It looks like the 25th of July.
We have until the 25th of July on this, where it's still before us.
I'm just not sure if we're going to be in any different place Friday as we are today, because if the issue is up or down, we could do, I was reminded that we did something similar at the airport, an airport issue, where we said we're going to vote it down with a recommendation to go back and do a month-to-month. I'm not sure we're going to do anything different on Friday than we could do today. That's my concern. So I don't want to lose time either, because if the department has to go back and negotiate a month-to-month, we're going to lose out on a week here for them to do that negotiation. And since I got from most of the council members was that they're in favor of doing a month-to-month, so I would rather just say to do that now, vote this thing down now, and ask the department to go back and do a month-to-month.
We unfortunately can't. We can only reject as is and send it back, or approve as is.
A few months ago, we voted something down and we recommended to the department to go back and do a month-to-month. We're not acting on the month-to-month, we're recommending that they do a month-to-month.
Madam Clerk, any clarification? Would that be in order?
You could do that. You could
Okay.
disapprove and ask them to go back.
And with a
to
recommendation. So it would be a disapprove action formally.
Disapprove
and
action.
And a recommendation of something, if that.
I would much rather do that today unless there's some reason or something different we're going to do Friday. I just don't see what this week is buying us.
Okay. Ms. Gruhl?
I understand Mr. Weezar's comments. I think I still have some questions. I'm not sure the impact of that month to month and whether or not it should be 3 months or whatever it be, and think that if we could have the general manager here, what we could do is continue it until tomorrow, talk to the department, see if that's feasible, if there's some questions that can be answered, and we could just continue it again if we needed to. There's no reason why we couldn't do that if we were not ready tomorrow.
I'd rather do tomorrow.
And then with the issue of, again, looking at how that month to month and have a report back as quickly as possible.
Okay. So just to clarify the motion is now to continue it one day till tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have a motion, Mr. Weezar, formally? Okay. Mr. Reyes?
I just want to make sure that we understand what are drop dead dates before we start getting fined, so that maybe we can get that tomorrow on our feedback. It's
The 25th is our last day that we'd have jurisdiction.
okay.
Drop dead. Okay. So if there's no objection, we will continue it one day until tomorrow. Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is item number 35, and that was called special by Councilmember Gruhl.
I had Mr. Padilla down on 35. Yeah. Mr. Padilla?
Well, I had called a special, Mr. Labange. This is your motion. I don't know if you had questions. I'd defer to you first.
Members, on this particular issue here, if I could just ask the staff to come up and just explain clearly. It's a technical matter. Mr. Miller, I think you'll be able to maybe explain it, but I think Chief Keene, you've been here all morning. We want to get to know you better. Chief Bursick, come on up here. It's got a lot of seats up here. No fire marshal in this room. We're going to kick you out.
Well, essentially, what is before you is a proposal for a clarification on the
Thanks,
November
Brett.
ballot. Very briefly, when the voters approved Proposition F, there were regular fire stations and regional fire stations. In the information packet, a regional fire station was defined as 2 acres. City attorney has opined that that means 2 contiguous acres. As this council well knows, in Hollywood, there has been extreme difficulty in locating the regional fire station there.
Florentine Gardens.
That's the Florentine Gardens issue. Now, Chief Keene certainly can address this, but fire department has indicated that operationally, the regional fire station facilities, the training facilities and the actual fire station, the intent of that is to keep the firefighters in the area and in the district during training so that there aren't delays in services, so that the community is in fact served. They have indicated that in fact they can accommodate those on 2 separate pieces of land, which would still equal approximately 2 acres. So really all that this would attempt to do is to clarify that a regional station within the community can be on separate parcels as long as the facilities that encompass a regional station are present. And I think that the end result of that is a substantial savings to the city. As you indicated with Florentine Gardens, I think by being able to split these facilities, we could save $10, perhaps $20 million in siting that facility in Hollywood. That
Thank
in
you
a
very
nutshell
much,
is what's before
Mr.
you.
Miller. I know Mr. Garcetti and I share this service area for Engine 82 and Paramedic 82. We've tried real hard to get space for it, but it's been quite difficult. And one of our goals is not to displace people. And there's a lot of existing housing that's up there. This technical amendment, if that's a correct term, of this matter before the voters would allow us to use possibly the existing site of 82s and a site that the city presently owns. Thus, what Mr. Miller said, the saving in the land cost could go into it. And the whole concept is to have this corrected so that we could better serve the people of the Hollywood area in a station built when 1952, I believe, is the date that station was built. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Miller, Chief Bursick, Chief Keene, and Deputy City Engineer Brad Smith.
Thank you, Battalion Chief Labange. We now have Mr. Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. So appreciate you answering Mr. Labange's question. One of my first questions is, how does this differ, or how would this apply to non-Prop F projects? Hold my time, please.
Councilman, I'm not sure your question.
Well, the agenda item speaks to revising and clarifying the provisions of Proposition F regarding the construction of regional fire stations.
Yes, sir.
Are there or are there not regional fire stations proposed or under development that are funded by sources other than Prop F?
We have a couple other projects, one in Playa Vista that's currently under construction. We have proposed, I think, up in the northeast San Fernando Valley, San Fernando area, and I'm not sure if we have any others other than those two.
But you've named at least a couple. Do the provisions and clarifications you're seeking today apply to those regional training facilities as well? Or is this strictly a making sure the funding is eligible issue?
I think that'd be more.
Yeah, Mr. Padilla, as long as it's not funded with Prop F, it's your determination in consultation with fire department on how to do that. This is specifically related to the language that was in Prop F.
Okay.
For 82s, that's right.
And as far as regional fire stations, you mentioned the one at Playa that's under construction. Is there an established need for additional ones in different parts of the city? To ensure response time at the various categories that the department is striving for the health and safety of our residents, are we at sufficient capacity when it comes to regional fire stations and local fire stations?
Well, as there's additional development within the city, such as Playa Vista, the station gets added. There was up in the S&S construction area near the 118 freeway in Tampa, in the San Fernando Valley, there was a station built there. And other areas, just as the population increases, over time we'll need additional stations. I think what we have in Prop F was at that point in time when that bond was passed, it provided what we needed. And of course, going forward, as the additional need is identified, it'll be staffed out and of course brought before council committees and hopefully will be passed and the stations will be built.
Okay. And the reason I ask, you can take a wild guess, is because one of those regional fire stations that's on the books right now is in the northeast San Fernando Valley. Colleagues, the City of Los Angeles provides fire service to the City of San Fernando, yet there's no fire station located within the city limits of San Fernando. So what we have is trucks coming in from Sylmar, from Pacoima, from Mission Hills to respond to incidents in that city. That's not a bad thing. We have a contract with the City of San Fernando where they pay us for that service. For the residents of that city, and equally as important, for the residents of Sylmar, Pacoima, Mission Hills, response times at all those categories are way above the citywide average and way above where we need to be to ensure the maximum health and safety of our citizens. So it is an area we're looking at for a fire station and regional training facility. I understand, was it yesterday in public safety? There was a report on that item. There's a separate motion for this, but
There's a report this afternoon in
this
IGGS.
afternoon,
Yeah.
where I know the fire department's going to make the case for why we should move forward with something like that, but I'll in advance ask for your support in identifying the resources necessary to provide those upgrades, because I think we have a real opportunity here in the short term to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. As one point of information, have we made a determination yet or had an opinion on whether it requires a two-thirds vote because it has to do with bond, or whether it's a simple majority?
The city attorney indicated that it is a 10-vote item.
Oh, not in here for the electorate.
For the electorate, it would be a two-thirds.
It is two-thirds, even though it's not a new tax or anything. That's, okay.
It's an amendment to, according to Mr. Echeverria, it's an amendment to the existing item, which was a two-thirds.
Okay, so require two-thirds popular vote. All right, let's open the roll on this item, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
And that is approved. If we can reconsider, we'll forthwith on that. And if we can reconsider 32, please, if we can open the roll on reconsideration. Open and close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
And if there's no objection, we're going to continue that an additional day till Friday's meeting. Now, again, that's the Owens Lake matter. For anybody who is following along, we will not take that up tomorrow's meeting, but at Friday's meeting, if there's no objection, so ordered. Next order of business, please.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Let's post and refer those motions.
There are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Weiss requests to be excused July 21st, 25th, and 26th for city business. A motion is required.
I will move, and Mr. Rosendahl second. If there's no objection, those excuses are granted.
Councilmember Cardenas requests to be excused July 18th for personal business. A motion is required.
We will grant that again. Mr. Cardenas, I also said on last Friday's meeting, that is the day before a lot of the ballot initiative items are there, so we're going to be close to a quorum, so we'll just be circling back with everybody who's excused for that day to make sure we have enough members to get things on the ballot. And Mr. Rosendahl will move, I'll second, and if there's no objection, Mr. Cardenas is excused. Next item.
And Councilmember Reyes previously requested to be excused on the 26th, and he is changing that to being requested to be excused for the entire meeting, so it's just a correction.
Okay. That is corrected.
And that clears the desk.
Any announcements, colleagues? Do we have any announcements? Mr. Labange.
Yeah, members, we'll all be representing Los Angeles at the 50th anniversary of Sister Cities International. Program started by President Eisenhower as a people-to-people program. This is our 50th anniversary. You know, over 22 sister cities. It will improve our ability to communicate well with others and bring the spirit of what President Eisenhower thought of as people-to-people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. Other announcements, colleagues? Mr. Parks?
Somebody's watching is going to go to my home. Rob my home.
Hold on one second, Mr. Parks, please. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to announce that tomorrow, on Thursday, July 13th, we will be participating in a renaming of Southwest Community Police Station in honor of Homer F. Broom, and all of you should have gotten an invitation to that. Homer Broom was our first black captain and black commander in the history of LAPD. That will be Thursday, July 13th, 10:30 a.m. in front of the Southwest Station at 1546 Martin Luther King Boulevard. And then also for community notification, there's a great deal of interest in the creation of the Expo University Park Community Advisory Committee. Those elections will be held on July 27th at 5:30 p.m. at the Epic Center, dealing with that creation of that new organization.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Other announcements, colleagues?
Mr. Parks, please give Homer Broom my congratulations as well. He also served as a great Public Works Commissioner under the Bradley administration.
Thank you. Mr. Zine.
Yes, also my congratulations to Homer Broom. I worked for him when he was the captain at West Los Angeles Division, and a tremendous leader, a wonderful man. Also today at 3 o'clock there's going to be a groundbreaking at Lanark Park Pool, a pool that's been out of service for many, many years. It's 100 and something out in the San Fernando Valley today, so long overdue, but we're doing a groundbreaking. We're going to rebuild that pool.
You were there at the
Great Smith
original-
District, Northridge Pool's being rebuilt, so we're going to probably finally bring some pools back into service in the San Fernando Valley where they're desperately needed. Unlike down in the Chanasans area where you've got that nice cool summer breeze, we've got that nice hot summer heat.
I think I saw a picture of you, Mr. Zine, at the original groundbreaking 100 years ago. So
100 years ago,
nice
yeah.
to see
right
history
away.
repeat itself.
Thank you, Ensign Garcetti.
Yes, and Mr. Labange.
Yeah, I thank you, and also I think we
Announcement
should
number
send,
3.
last one here, that we congratulate Italy on winning the World Cup, and also congratulate our sister city of Berlin for hosting a great athletic event for the last
And the
month.
lesson we learned was headbutts don't pay.
Headbutts don't pay. They do, I guess, if you're the greatest player at the modern era.
That's right. There we go. Anybody else with announcements? Any adjourning motions today? If I can please ask everybody in council chambers to rise for our adjourning motions. Ms. Hahn?
Thank you. I'm so sad to announce this. This woman was just the dearest woman in our community of Watts. Adele LaRue passed away, and she was 88 years old. And I will tell you, she just spent her whole life trying to improve the quality of life for the people of Watts. She was a member of the CRA's Community Development Advisory Committee for 34 years. She was involved with the Watts Towers in planning the annual community Martin Luther King Day celebration. She helped coordinate the annual Watts Christmas Parade, and she called my office all the time to help with our constant effort to try to clean up the community. Was always calling to report illegal dumping and trash, abandoned cars. She really was just such a part of our community. I can't imagine Watts without Miss LaRue. And she was so cute, even at 88, she had a cane. When we would ever have community events and there was music playing, she would get herself up out of her chair and dance a little jig just to make sure we all knew that she was still spry and had a great spirit. And her son, Tyree, survives her, and he really was a dear son to her and spent a lot of time really taking care of her the last few years. And she also has 2 grandchildren. Adele LaRue is as much a part of the Watts community as anyone. And again, it's just hard to picture our community without her, so we will miss her a lot. I'd also like to adjourn in the member of Rosario Antonio de Oliva, who passed away on July 6th at his home in San Pedro. He was 69. He was a lifelong resident of San Pedro. His parents came from Ischia, which will be one of our newest sister cities in November. He graduated from Mary Star of the Sea High School and later served in the Army and had a lifelong career in retail management. He was a supermarket manager for over 30 years for chains such as McCoy's Markets, managing stores in Long Beach, Pico Rivera, Torrance, and before retiring, he was a store manager for the Helig Myers Furniture in Torrance. He was hardworking, dedicated, loyal manager and always earned the respect and admiration of his co-workers. He retired in 1999 and immediately he dedicated himself to a number of groups and activities at the Mary Star of the Sea Parish. Over the last few years, he made several trips back to Ischia to visit his cousins and friends, and it was last summer when I was in Ischia exploring the possibility of the sister city relationship. I was able to meet with him over there, and actually he sat right behind me at one of their huge festivals of the Santa Ana. So it was, I have pictures with him, and it's really, he loved Ischia almost as much as he loved San Pedro. And he's survived by his sister, Nancy, by his nephews and niece, and he'll be missed by so many people. He was a very warm, gentle man. I'm sorry that he didn't live long enough to see his beloved city of Ischia become our next sister city. Visitation will be held from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. today at McNerney's, and followed by a prayer vigil at 7 p.m. A funeral mass will be offered Wednesday, July 12th, 10:30 at Mary Star of the Sea Church, followed by the interment at Green Hills Memorial Park. We will miss him. He was a great member of our community, both in San Pedro and over in Italy.
Mr. Labange seconds. And Mr. Labange?
Members, I'd like to ask that we all join together and adjourn in memory of Mabel Meyer, who was the wonderful mother-in-law of our very own Sergeant of Arms, Herman Landry. She was preceded at her death by her husband Whitney and her son Lawrence. She had survived by 7 beautiful daughters and 3 sons. I ask we adjourn in memory of Mabel Meyer.
All members.
As well as that, I ask we adjourn in memory of Catherine Leroy, who was born in France but lived in Los Angeles. She was one of the great photojournalists for many, many years. She died of early 60 years old, recently at St. John's Hospital. She was a famous photographer, especially during the Vietnam War. Catherine Leroy. I ask we adjourn in her memory. And finally, members, when things happen in cities, whether it's in our own or in other cities in the country or around the world, it's shocking. I think it's sometimes to send some love out for that. But there was a tragedy in St. Louis this last weekend, as reported in the Los Angeles Times. 4 children, Dana Johnson, Ryan Barnes, Ryan Mason, and Dana Johnson, as well as their friend Deandra Sherman, all ages from 13 to 16, on a wonderful picnic in St. Louis. Family, big family, all drowned in a little river that became a deep hole of water and trauma. Shallow rocks, but the rocks were deceivingly slick. All the children did not know how to swim, which is so tragic. I would ask that we adjourn in memory of these poor victims of a drowning that took place on a beautiful family outing, and we should send that forward to the city of St. Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. We'll have a second from Ms. Hahn. Mr. Parks.
I'd ask we adjourn in memory of retired Sergeant Curtis Munson. Did over 20 years of service with LAPD from 1962 to 1984. He's survived by his wife Mildred and 2 daughters, Janine and also Catrice. Funeral services for Sergeant Munson will be at Second Baptist Church on Friday at 11 a.m. Interment will follow at Inglewood Mortuary. The second one is, many of you had an opportunity to meet my grandmother a couple of years ago, Agnes Matuire Smith, celebrated her 100th birthday here in Chambers. She was born April 14, 1903, passed away Thursday, July 6 at the age of 103. She was born Red Cross, Louisiana, to Frank and Emma Matwire. She was the fifth of 12 siblings, attended school up to the 6th grade, but as we all know, she learned to say her alphabet backwards, which she continued throughout her life. She met and married my grandfather, Lester Smith, of 56 years, and together they raised 4 daughters, my mother, Gertrude, my aunt, Elmise, Inez, and Jean. In 1944, she and Lester moved her 2 youngest daughters to Los Angeles, and shortly thereafter, her 2 oldest daughters moved with a combined 7 children, which I was one. The 2 daughters, my grandmother labeled us the Magnificent Seven, were Agnes, Rose, Jules, Lee, Arthur, Cleo, Patsy, and Bernard. We've referred to my grandmother Agnes as Mamu, and she was a devout Catholic, cherished a relationship. The only thing I did not like about my grandmother is every day at 7 o'clock, no matter what you were doing, you had to kneel down and say the rosary with the radio, and that was one of her favorite pastimes. She was a member of St. Patrick's Church in Newton area for 50 years, becoming a member of the Holy Cross Parish later on. She was a member of the Altar Society at St. Patrick's, worked hard in her parish, and also was a member of the Ladies Auxiliary Knights of Peter Claver, Court 99. She was also a member of that organization for over 50 years. She leaves her 3 daughters, Gertrude in Los Angeles, Inez in Baton Rouge, and Jeannie in Louisiana. And her son-in-law, she is, this is remarkable, she has 15 grandchildren, 33 great-grandchildren, 38 great-great-grandchildren, and 1 great-great-great-grandchild. Her youngest sister, Marjorie, still lives in Beaumont, Texas. Her services will be at Holy Cross Cemetery on Friday at 11:30.
I know I speak for the entire council, Mr. Parks, when we express our deepest sympathies with you, and I know how close you were with your grandmother, and we were very graced to have her in these chambers here, and we'll have all members on that.
Mr. Parks, it was a wonderful day, and I just want to say, when you had your whole family there, your grandmother, your mother, and your wife, and children, it was very special, and having to run into them at the Monastery of the Angels recently, when you spoke of her being a devout Catholic, it was great to see her there. God bless her soul, and what a wonderful life that she lived.
In fact, many of you voted on, I think that day we initiated the city's response to citizens over the age of 100.
Right.
And she was the catalyst for that motion.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Mr. Parks. Other adjourning motions, Ms. Perry?
President, and I think some of the members would like to comment on the loss of this fine individual, Lou Danzler, who passed at the age of 69 due to complications from a stroke he suffered July the 1st. He grew up on a farm in South Carolina without a father and a future that held few prospects. He had an older cousin named Willie who taught young Lou and his friends about the lessons that a father teaches a son, and he carried those lessons with him all of his life. He came to Los Angeles later and worked several jobs simultaneously to provide for his family. He was a night shift custodian for the Los Angeles Unified School District, a stockroom clerk, a photographer, a gardener, and an Amway salesman. Now, a couple years after the Watts riots, Mr. Danzler found an 11-year-old breaking into his home. He spoke to the young man and discovered that his father was not in the home, and without the presence of a strong man in the house, like many young men, he turned to gangs as his role model. He then took that experience and used that to develop the concept of a neighborhood community center. Lou started the Challengers Boys and Girls Club, and Parks can comment to you a little bit about that as well. He invited some young neighbors and some other folks, kids from the area, and they went to a park where they began to, do calisthenics, exercise, play sports. It was such a success that Lou decided to do it again and again and again, and it eventually became a formal club. And these were the roots. Through his work, Challengers Boys and Girls Club not only became established, but grew on Vermont Avenue. A lot of the kids call him Mr. Lou, Papa Lou. He was always deeply loved, greatly respected, helping to guide young people into healthy, productive adults. The club grew into a nationally acclaimed organization, and over its years has served nearly 35,000 young people. Some of the former participants include John Singleton, one-time Dodger Eric Davis, who apparently was a member from the age of 7 until high school. I did visit once. Lou told me to come down to talk to the kids one morning, and he said there's someone really special there. And to my amazement, it was Henry Kissinger. And he sat and talked with those kids for an hour. And he was there because Lou asked him to come. And it was just delightful to hear the kids, while they didn't quite completely grasp who he was. I remember one of the children asked him, "Did your mother make you clean your room up every day like when we were, you were our age?" And Mr. Kissinger answered it very patiently and, gave them all sorts of good lessons that day. But it was those kinds of experiences that the kids who go to Challengers Boys and Girls Club under Lou's leadership have had, and I know will continue to have as the mantle passes to his son, Corey. So we have a beautiful facility now on Vermont Avenue, which includes a state-of-the-art tennis stadium, gymnasium, library, all built with private dollars, all built because of the strength, the character, and the attraction to what Lou had already created. Young people who go there get help with homework, do sports, dance, practice the arts, learn about home economics. Lou had a philosophy which he put in a book that he recently published, and we actually had him scheduled to come in a few weeks. I wanted to recognize him for the publishing of his book. He'd recently been hosted by Dave Clark, newscaster at Esalen Bookstore, and I'm going to ask Corey to come instead because his philosophy of love, of discipline, and parental involvement, which is the cornerstone of the Challengers program, is conveyed so beautifully in the book. He co-wrote the book with Kathleen Felicina, and the book is called A Place to Go, A Place to Grow, Simple Things That Make a Difference for At-Risk Kids. Through it all, always, you could go to Challengers and Lou would be standing in the parking lot, sometimes with a hat on, sometimes not. And if you didn't know who he was, you'd think he was just some guy, but he was Lou Dantzler, running the show, running it humbly, modestly, and he always insisted that whatever he did with young people was something that anyone could do if they cared enough to focus and give that sustained and deep commitment. So he was an incredible force. There's a gaping space there, but I know in time it will be filled. He did prepare, and there was a transition plan in place, and while Corey may not realize he was ready, he is ready, and I know we will go on to even greater things. He's survived by his 2 sons, Corey and Mark, his wife, 3 sisters. There will be a service to remember him this Saturday, 11 a.m., 5029 South Vermont Avenue.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl and Mr. Parks. I'd like to add some thoughts.
I wanted to add my comments to Ms. Perry, who painted a wonderful picture of Lou Dantzler. And I remember Mr. Weston a couple months ago when we lost our wonderful assembly member that he talked about. He had just said, I should call, let's get together. And I remember reading the article just a month ago and thinking, I should pick up the phone and call Lou Dantzler and see how he's doing and congratulate him on an extraordinary piece in the paper that acknowledged his life's commitment. And Jan is right, you would go there and he was very unassuming, but you quickly realize that he had everything under control and that he had the love and I think respect of those kids. And no matter where you were kind of in the United States and probably internationally, people knew about Challengers. And presidents went there, vice presidents. I remember even when I was at HUD, they would call to say, the president wants to go to that location. It was the stopping point for people to learn about what was successful in dealing with at-risk kids and who was this man, Lou Dantzler. And he touched so many lives. And as you're right, Ms. Perry, there's a gaping hole here in Los Angeles, but across the country for people who were touched by him. And just we could still learn a lot from him and his book. But it does just remind us that seize the moment, call that person and acknowledge them, because each day passes that we might lose them. And he was really an extraordinary man. I feel honored that I knew him.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. Mr. Parks?
Thank you, Mr. President. I've known Lou since the late 60s when he started Challengers out of the back of his truck, and he used to take kids to the park. And one of the things he did in South Los Angeles, he turned a very bad situation into a good situation in that a grocery store moved out of the community. The store was abandoned, and Lou turned it into a youth center. And we used to go there, and these kids would play basketball on the linoleum floor. And it wasn't until 1984 at the Olympics he became the recipient of a grant that actually gave them their first basketball floor, authentic basketball floor that's still there. He then proceeded to expand and begin to create programs specifically for the community. He has a dental program where actually a certified dentist comes in and provides dental care for the kids that are part of the program, the tennis program, a variety of things. And he had a real dream to move all the way west and take up that whole block eventually. And so he will be missed. It's strange, we talked just recently when he was getting the foreword for his book done, and he wanted to make sure that Magic Johnson was a part of that, and we created that relationship so they could get that done. But he was a guy that touched so many lives. You'd go over there and there'd be 2,000 to 3,000 kids running around, all of them orderly, all of them on their best behavior. And the last thing you want to do is be a Challengers and run through the building and have Lou on the other end of the hallway, because he would stop that immediately, and they all viewed him as their father or their parent or their uncle, and that's how he ran it. And so we're going to miss him.
Thank you. Any other adjourning motions, colleagues? If not, Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you all. We will next be meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, the 12th of July, here in City Council Chambers at City Hall. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.